Chapter 1562. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had just entered the city when they realized that many cultivators in the city were looking at them in astonishment. Aren't those the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty? They actually dare to swagger into the city? The cultivators from the three dynasties are waiting for them. Won't they be caught by the cultivators from the three dynasties? Are the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty crazy or something? They are really fearless. In an instant, everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest in disbelief. This was really too strange. If it was any other team that encountered such a situation, they would have run away quickly. Who would be like the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty who would throw themselves at the muzzle of the gun? Everyone looked at them curiously, wanting to know how the show would unfold. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest understood when they felt the crowd's gaze. It seemed that everyone already knew about this news. When the crowd saw the six contracted beasts walking side by side behind Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, they were completely dumbfounded. Fuck, the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty are really heaven-defying. There are only 8 people in a team, and they actually have 6 contracted beasts? We are a team from a large dynasty, but we don't even have a single contracted beast. They are just a middle-sized dynasty, and they actually have 6 contracted beasts. I heard that the cultivators from the 3 dynasties have been looking for them because they snatched the 3 wind spirit tiger cubs. Now it seems that the rumors are true. They have already snatched the cubs, and they are still swaggering here. Don't tell me they want to return the cubs to the 3 dynasties? The crowd looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest in astonishment. They simply could not understand. Very quickly, Fang Wensheng, Yu Junfei, and Cheng Hafeng led the cultivators from their respective dynasties and rushed over. When they saw the 3 wind spirit tiger cubs behind Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, their eyes lit up with excitement. Bailey Hongzhuang, your courage really isn't small. You actually dared to enter the city so openly. Fang Wensheng sneered. He did not care whether Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were crazy or not. He only needed to snatch the cubs back. Bailey Hongzhuang's exquisite face was filled with astonishment. Puzzled, she asked, "Young Master Fang, what do you mean by that?" Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was still going to argue with him, Fang Wensheng went straight to the point. "Now obediently hand over the cubs, and I can let you guys have a quick death." When he said that, the faces of the people's faces darkened. Fang Wensheng's words were really disgusting. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled, looking at Fang Wensheng with eyes that were cold and murderous. "Fang Wensheng, you really think you're some big shot, ah? Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue?" Xiao He and Xiao Bai had already jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders. The 2 little guys' eyes were also filled with anger. This Fang Wensheng is really annoying. If I don't kill him, I won't be able to get rid of the hatred in my heart. Xiao He's face was filled with anger. There were all kinds of birds in the forest. This Fang Wensheng was born with a face that deserved a beating. If he was not taught a lesson, he would not be able to take it lying down. Chapter 1563. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang dared to mock him, Fang Wensheng was stunned for a moment. He was so angry that he laughed. "Bailey Hongzhuang, you are quite brave. Thank you for the compliment." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "I have always been brave." Cheng Hafeng's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He still had a warm smile on his face. "Miss Bailey, as long as you hand over the wind spirit tiger, we cultivators from the martial dynasty will leave. What do you think?" Cheng Hafeng was different from Fang Wensheng. After the previous encounter, he understood that the Tiangang dynasty could rely on a middle-sized dynasty team to make a name for themselves in the assessment competition. It was not just luck. At least, the other party was able to make them be chased by so many demonic beasts last time. Just this method alone was very impressive. If possible, he did not want to offend such a capable opponent. Seeing that Cheng Hafeng's words were different from his, Fang Wensheng's expression changed. Wasn't this the same as undermining him in front of his face? Yu Junfei's thoughts were the same as Cheng Hafeng's. He continued, "Miss Bailey, Cheng Hafeng is right. As long as you hand over the wind spirit tiger, we will pretend that nothing happened. What do you think?" Bailey Hongzhuang listened to Cheng Hafeng and Yu Junfei's words. She then looked at Fang Wensheng with a cold smile. The provocation and ridicule in her eyes were obvious. Fang Wensheng's expression turned ugly. He wanted to make things difficult for Cheng Hafeng and Yu Junfei, but he also understood that he was not qualified to do so. The cultivators in the city looked at the confrontation between the cultivators from the four dynasties, and their expressions became interesting. It seemed that this was a good show that could not be missed. Some of the teams that had formed an alliance with the Tiangang dynasty were watching from the side. They also wanted the Wind Spirit Tiger, but after the cultivators from the three dynasties appeared, they no longer had any chance. Therefore, they could only watch the show. The cultivators from the three dynasties are all here. The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty have no way out. I'm afraid they can only give the Wind Spirit Tiger away. If I were them, I wouldn't have come to the city. Isn't this courting death? In my opinion, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty must know that they can't escape the pursuit of the three dynasties, so they decided to call the Wind Spirit Tiger out. Otherwise, being chased by the teams of the three great dynasties at all times isn't a good thing. Almost all the cultivators present suddenly felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were only doing this because they had compromised. In fact, there were many cultivators who chose to compromise in this assessment every day. Nothing was more important than one's life. Therefore, such a compromise would not attract the disdain of other cultivators. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's next words made all the cultivators freeze in place. I'm really sorry, but we've already made a contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger. Even if we give them to you, they won't be of any use. Bailey Hongzhuang's elegant and charming face had an elegant and charming smile. Her eyes were apologetic and her voice was light and pleasant. However, this voice was not what the cultivators from the three dynasties wanted to hear. All the cultivators present looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. The possibility of this happening was close to zero. Chapter 1564. Damn, Bailey Hongzhuang. What kind of joke is this? How is it possible to form a contract with a demonic beast in this assessment? There's no sealing master here. Even if you want to find a reason, you should find a more reliable one. No one will believe this kind of reason. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. The probability of this kind of thing happening was like a fantasy story. It was simply impossible. Cheng Hifeng glanced at the surrounding cultivators, then looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, Lady Bailey, you've seen it yourself. No one will believe it. Compared to Cheng Hifeng's faint smile, indifferent and warm appearance, Yu Junfei and Fang Wensheng's faces had already darkened. From their point of view, Bailey Hongzhuang was making up a lie that was impossible to deceive them. Only a person with a good temper like Cheng Hifeng would talk nicely with Bailey Hongzhuang. If it was them, they would have already made a move. Looking at Cheng Hifeng's calm appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with admiration. It had to be said that this Cheng Hifeng was truly an extraordinary person, just as bearing alone was not something an ordinary person could compare to. At least, Fang Wensheng and Yu Junfei could not compare to him in this aspect. Although a smiling tiger made people wary, it also made people admire him. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Her expression was somewhat regretful. It's a pity that what I said was true. When these words came out, Cheng Hifeng's brows could not help but furrow, but they quickly relaxed. Lady Bailey, I've already said it. If you continue to evade, then there's no meaning. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Cheng Gongzi, I understand what you're saying. With your intelligence, I will not have the thought of deceiving you. Moreover, this kind of lie has no meaning. Could it be that Cheng Gongzi thinks that I would make up such an inferior lie? Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Cheng Hifeng's expression slightly changed. Previously, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was lying. But now, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't lying, because Bailey Hongzhuang was too calm and confident. Cheng Hifeng narrowed his eyes. This was the second time he had come into contact with Bailey Hongzhuang. The last time he met Bailey Hongzhuang, he did not say much and did not know much about her. However, after today's exchange, He felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was quite a character. At the very least, her brain was much better than Fong Wenqing's. If what Miss Bailey said is true, then do you mind showing it to us? Cheng Hifeng asked with a smile. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had said, there was no point in making up a lie about this kind of thing. As long as they checked, they would know the result. However, before Bailey Hongzhuang could say anything, Fong Wenqing's voice rang out. What's the point of talking to her? As long as we kill them, won't this contracted beast be ours? Fong Wenqing looked at Cheng Hifeng in confusion. He only felt that Cheng Hifeng's actions were completely unnecessary. Looking at Fong Wenqing's anxious appearance, Cheng Hifeng could not help but frown. Cooperating with this kind of person would really damage his reputation. If Fong Wenqing's cultivation talent was not strong enough, this kind of idiot could only be cannon fodder. Chapter 1565. Cheng Hifeng glanced at Fong Wenqing speechlessly, but he ignored Fong Wenqing's words. Miss Bailey, as long as you can prove that you have really contracted with the Wind Spirit Tiger, then the cultivators of the Wu dynasty will leave directly and no longer participate in anything. How about it? If it wasn't for the Wind Spirit Tiger, he didn't want to be enemies with the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. He had a hunch that the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were not easy to deal with. Every dark horse had its own luck. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had come all the way here, and all their opponents had ended up in a bad situation. Once some people's luck came, no matter who they were, they would not have a good end. If the Wind Spirit Tiger really had no hope, then he didn't need to spend energy to be enemies with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Listening to Cheng Hifeng's words, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had some joy in their eyes. It seemed that the judgment of Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue was really not wrong. Cheng Hifeng's decision was the same as what they had guessed. Fong Wenqing looked at Cheng Hifeng puzzledly. He didn't understand why Cheng Hifeng was doing this. As long as they made a move, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty could only kowtow and beg for mercy. Why did they have to wait for Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to show off? Wasn't this a waste of time? Okay. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips evoked a faint smile. In the next moment, she waved her hand, and Xia Jiqing, Bai Junyu, and Yuan Xiaoman walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. The three people were holding their contract beasts in their hands. Since Cheng Hifeng wanted to witness it, they didn't mind letting him see it. The eyes of all the cultivators present were attracted. They wanted to know what the result would be. Although, in their opinion, this was simply an impossible thing, but Bailey Hongzhuang was so confident that they couldn't help but have some doubts. Cheng Hifeng stood in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. From beginning to end, he had been paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was always calm, and no one could find a trace of a problem. Looking at the Wind Spirit Tiger held by Xia Jiqing and the others, Cheng Hifeng took a closer look, and his face suddenly changed. A wisp of shock climbed onto his smiling face, and it was filled with dense disbelief and doubt. How is this possible? Cheng Hifeng only suspected that he had seen it wrong. However, no matter how he looked at it, the truth reminded him that he was not mistaken. Everything was real. After a long while, Cheng Hifeng recovered from his shock and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. At this moment, he finally understood why he had a bad premonition in his heart. It turned out that this was the reason. He had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would be able to complete the contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger before the end of the assessment. He suddenly realized why Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had been missing these days. They must have gone to contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger. Now that they had appeared in the city, it was because they knew that no one could take the Wind Spirit Tiger away. Fong Wenqing and Yu Junfei didn't care at all. Even if they used their toes to think, they knew that it was impossible. However, after seeing the sudden change in Cheng Hifeng's face, they were also a little surprised. Could it be that what Bailey Hongzhuang said was true? Chapter 1566. With this look, Fong Wenqing and Yu Junfei were dumbfounded. They must have seen wrongly, right? Fong Wenqing and Yu Junfei had the same thought in their minds. After taking a closer look, they saw each other's shocked eyes and were sure that they did not see wrongly. This was simply impossible. Feng Wensheng and Yu Junfei couldn't help but think this shouldn't be a trick deliberately used by the Tiangang dynasty, right? However, the fluctuation of the contract was very obvious, and it was not something that could be disguised. What kind of joke was this? The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had only disappeared for a few days, and they had already completed the contract. What kind of efficiency was this? The most important thing was, where did the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty find a sealing master? Sealing masters had always been a rare existence, and only young cultivators appeared in the assessment competition. It was impossible for a sealing master to appear. How did the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty do it? Just looking at the expressions of the captains of the three dynasties, the cultivators present guessed the real situation, and their hearts were also shocked. My God, it can't be true, right? Didn't you see that Cheng Hufeng and the others are silent? It must be true. Otherwise, they would not have such an expression. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty are really amazing. They can contract with monsters in this assessment competition. In addition to them, I really can't find such an example in the other dynasties. Just like how they had been in the small world for almost 2 years, they had been looking for monster cubs. However, even if they found a monster cub, they could not successfully contract it. On the contrary, it could be robbed by other cultivators along the way. Therefore, many cultivators could only give up this idea. Although the contract beast was important, their life was more important. They absolutely could not let the contract beast affect them. Feng Wensheng did not know what to say at this moment. The things that the Tiangang dynasty did really made people speechless. Young Master Cheng, you have seen it. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was still indifferent, and there was a trace of a smile. The eyes of Xia Jiqing and the others were filled with vigilance. If the other party wanted to make a move, they would be ready to make a move first. Cheng Hufeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement, then smiled and said, I believe you. You have good means. I will not participate in this matter. Thank you. Cheng Hufeng looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang and asked again, Miss Bailey, there is something this one does not understand and would like to ask for your guidance. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Young Master Cheng, please speak. May I know where you found a sealing master? Even someone as smart as Cheng Hufeng couldn't figure out how Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did it. Even if he obtained the Wind Spirit Tiger, he could not guarantee that he would be able to find a sealing master to help him seal it. As everyone knew, the price of hiring a sealing master to seal a demonic beast was not small. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty could do it so easily. They had sealed 3 demonic beasts in one go. Moreover, they had sealed all of them successfully. This was too shocking. Following Cheng Hifeng's words, Feng Wensheng, Yu Junfei, and the others looked at Bailey Hongzhuang curiously. They couldn't understand this result either. The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a bright arc, and her voice was light and pleasant to the ear. Chapter 1567. As soon as he said that, all the cultivators present were completely dumbfounded. All eyes were focused on Bailey Hongzhuang, and they were filled with disbelief. Bailey Hongzhuang is a sealing master? Is this possible? Are you sure you're not joking? Everyone was stupefied. How rare was a sealing master? Which sealing master didn't have countless cultivators seeking an audience with them? However, a sealing master was standing in front of them now. Moreover, he was a cultivator who was the same age as them, or even younger. For a moment, the atmosphere seemed to have frozen. Everyone opened their mouths wide, but they didn't know what to say. This kind of thing was even more unbelievable than the previous things. Cheng Hifeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang calmly. He saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were clear, and she didn't seem to be lying at all. I understand. Cheng Hifeng smiled faintly. He didn't doubt Bailey Hongzhuang's words. In fact, in this assessment competition, other than their team having a sealing master, there was almost no other possibility. No sealing master would spend so much effort to help someone contract 3 demonic beasts in such an environment. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had already created many miracles along the way. It didn't seem so unbelievable to create another miracle now. At least, this person was Bailey Hongzhuang. Compared to the cultivators of other dynasties, this person was more trustworthy. If Cheng Hifeng was still hesitating whether he should leave like this before, now he was incomparably certain of his thoughts. Such a young, sealing master, her future could be said to be boundless. Until now, they still didn't know which dynasty the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were from. However, just from Bailey Hongzhuang's identity as a sealing master, he could determine that the power behind Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't small. Under such circumstances, not offending Bailey Hongzhuang was a very wise decision. I always do what I say. Cheng Hifeng still smiled. He waved his hand and said to the cultivators behind him, "Let's go." The Martial Empire's cultivator did not hesitate after hearing Cheng Hifeng's words. There had never been any problems with the captain's decisions. When Fang Wensheng saw that Cheng Hifeng was about to leave, he couldn't help but ask, "Cheng Hifeng, you're leaving just like that?" Cheng Hifeng glanced at Fang Wensheng and said, "Now that things have come to this, what's the point of staying?" He wasn't a narrow-minded person like Fang Wensheng, and he didn't take the previous grudge to heart. In the next instant, Cheng Hifeng left. Seeing the Martial Empire's cultivator leave just like that, the crowd of cultivators present were all astonished. They hadn't expected the Martial dynasty's cultivators to be so efficient, but they still had a good impression of them. Seeing Cheng Hifeng leave just like that, Fang Wensheng's expression became unsightly. He was filled with hatred towards the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. The wind spirit tiger was supposed to belong to them. Now that someone else had contracted it, he had completely lost all hope. However, he couldn't let this matter go just like that. This was intolerable. The Tiangang dynasty's cultivators were simply relying on the sealing master to trick them. If they left without paying attention to anything, wouldn't they be seen as a joke by other cultivators? Chapter 1568. Thinking of this, Fang Wensheng directly looked at Yu Junfei and said, "What do you plan to do?" Yu Junfei's mood was also very complicated. He never thought that something like this would happen. Now there were only two choices, either leave or fight. Yu Junfei looked at Fang Wensheng beside him. Their relationship had always been bad. If they joined forces to deal with the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty, wouldn't it be an even bigger joke? "We're leaving too." Yu Junfei waved his hand. Since the cultivators of the Martial dynasty took the lead, then they did not need to care about the rumors. At least it was better than continuing to stay with people like Fang Wensheng. Soon, the cultivators of the Cloud Sword dynasty also left, leaving only the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty and the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty confronting each other. I didn't expect the cultivators of the Martial dynasty and Cloud Sword dynasty to leave just like that. Aren't the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty a little too lucky? If this happened to us, I think the cultivators of the three dynasties will definitely not let us go. Now that they actually left just like that, it's really strange. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty have always been very lucky. They dare to swagger into the city because they have nothing to fear. For a moment, everyone only envied the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. Fang Wensheng could not help but ridicule after seeing Yu Junfei leave. They were all useless people. Even if he could not obtain the wind spirit tiger, he would not let the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty off so easily. After seeing the cultivators of the two dynasties leave, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others shifted their gazes to Fang Wensheng. In the next moment, under everyone's astonished gazes, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others directly took out their weapons. This scene was completely within their calculations. As long as the cultivators of the two dynasties left, they would attack the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty. The strength of a large dynasty's team was indeed powerful, but it was not like they had never encountered them before. This Fang Wensheng had repeatedly caused trouble for them, and they also had a sense of anger in their hearts. Now it was time to personally deal with all of this. After seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The actions of the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were really not something that ordinary people could do. They actually dared to take the initiative to declare war on the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty. Fang Wensheng was also stunned. He did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others actually dared to provoke him first. It was really funny. "Ha! I really didn't expect you guys to be so bold." Fang Wensheng sneered. "You're unhappy. I want your head." Mo Yunjue's voice was cold. He had long been itching to beat up this kind of noisy fellow. Fang Wensheng's words, Fang Wensheng's Fang Wensheng's Fang. He remembered that it was Mo Yunjue who had blocked his palm. Mo Yunjue's strength was also very strong. Kill the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand, and a lapis lazuli sword instantly appeared in her hand. She had already seen through Fang Wensheng's narrow-mindedness. Even if they did not declare war, Fang Wensheng would still cause trouble for them. It was better to be simple and directly attack. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi were already prepared. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's order, everyone directly charged towards the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty. Chapter 1569. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest did not say much. The Azure Forest dynasty's team originally had 12 cultivators, but one of them died when they were being chased by the demonic beasts. Now, there were only 11 cultivators left. The Tiangang dynasty's team had a total of 8 cultivators. Including Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi, it was a one-on-one battle. As for the 3 wind spirit tigers, they were still too young, so they could not participate in the battle. Mo Yunjue went up against Fang Wensheng, and Bailey Hongzhuang went up against another cultivator. Ever since their strength broke through, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest rarely had conflicts with cultivators from other dynasties. Now that they were going to fight again, not only were they not worried at all, but they were also very excited. As long as they dealt with the Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators, they believed that their points would skyrocket again. The assessment competition was about to end, and everyone was originally very worried about the problem of points. Now that the Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators were going to throw themselves at the muzzle of the gun, they naturally had to seize the opportunity. Not only Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, but Fang Wensheng and the rest also had the same thought. Now, they only hoped to get better and better points. Although as long as a cultivator was on the top 100 list, they could join the sect, but everyone knew that the higher their ranking, the higher their treatment and status in the sect would be. No matter when, the treatment of outstanding people was different from ordinary people. They're fighting just like that? The Tiangang dynasty's cultivators are really not ordinary domineering. The Azure Forest dynasty is a very famous large dynasty, and the Tiangang dynasty's cultivators dare to attack without saying anything. This kind of courage is really unparalleled. Who do you think will win and who lose in the end? Is there even a need to say? How powerful are the Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators? The Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators will definitely win this battle. I don't think so. The Tiangang dynasty's cultivators are also very powerful. Everyone says that they're the dark horse of this assessment competition. The cultivators had different opinions. They just watched the two teams fight in full swing, and there were even people who bet on the outcome of this battle. After Fang Wensheng and Mo Yunjue exchanged blows, his expression changed. The previous collision in the forest was only a punch, so he did not have a deep feeling. Now that they had exchanged blows, he realized that Mo Yunjue's strength was really not ordinary. Not only was his strength not weaker than him, he might even be stronger than him. After understanding this point, Fang Wensheng's face became gloomy. He couldn't understand why Mo Yunjue was so strong when he was just a cultivator from a small empire. At the same time, he noticed the battle between the other cultivators. Such terrifying combat strength would be considered extraordinary even in a large empire's team. Yet they were actually from a small empire? Or were they? However, the current situation did not allow Fang Wensheng to think about this at all. Mo Yunjue's attack had already arrived. Bailey Hongzhuang did not hold back when she attacked. There were so many cultivators watching here. If she did not settle it cleanly, it would undoubtedly cause more trouble. Chapter 1570. Captain, looks like this Tiangang dynasty's cultivators are very powerful. A cultivator from the Martial dynasty could not help but say. Cheng Huffeng looked at the scene in the distance indifferently and said, "Their strength is indeed very strong. Their background should not be simple either." He had already noticed earlier that not only Bailey Hongzhuang, but Imo Yunjue's strength was also very strong. However, Imo Yunjue clearly did not like to talk, so he had always remained silent. Even so, he was still able to determine that Imo Yunjue's strength was not simple from his posture and expression. This was because Imo Yunjue had always been standing in a defensive posture. Once someone launched a sneak attack, he would definitely attack with the fastest speed. Just this point alone was enough to prove that Imo Yunjue was an expert. He had never believed in the existence of luck in this world. There was only one reason why a small dynasty's team could come so far. Their strength was strong enough. The Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators seemed to have fallen into a disadvantage. A cultivator said in surprise. He had never thought that the Azure Forest dynasty's people would actually fall into a disadvantage. Cheng Hufeng laughed lightly. With Fong Wenqing's character, he's destined to be unlucky. They'll definitely lose this round. Let's go. As his voice fell, Cheng Hufeng no longer looked at the situation behind him and directly walked towards the next city. They had already stayed here for quite some time. It was time to leave. Hearing Cheng Hufeng's words, the Martial dynasty's cultivators were extremely impressed by Cheng Hufeng. They had never thought that the Tiangang dynasty's cultivators would be so powerful to actually be able to defeat the Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators. Their captain's eyesight was still impressive. After Yu Junfei led the team of cultivators away, he stood not far away and sized up the Azure Forest dynasty's movements. However, he did not think that the Tiangang dynasty's cultivators would make the first move. From the looks of it, it was not that Fong Wensheng did not want to let Bailey Hongzhuang and the others go, but that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not want to let Fong Wensheng go. After knowing this, Yu Junfei wasn't in a hurry to leave. He wanted to know where the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty got their courage from. Looking at the situation of this exchange of blows, Yu Junfei was dumbfounded too. Why did this Great Dipper dynasty's cultivators seem to be injected with stimulants when fighting? Fong Wensheng was clearly not Imo Yunjue's match from the way he was retreating. Not only Imo Yunjue, but the other cultivators of the Great Dipper dynasty were also very shocking. This was too shocking. If this continued, the decline of the Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators was only a matter of time. After all, with the Azure Forest dynasty's strength, even if they went against the Azure Forest dynasty, they might not be able to guarantee a 100% victory. The Great Dipper dynasty was merely a small dynasty, but its combat strength was actually so powerful. Most importantly, the combat strength of the three contracted beasts was also so strong. Wasn't this too abnormal? At this moment, Yu Junfei suddenly realized how wise his decision to leave was. Since he was unable to deal with the Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators all along, having the Great Dipper dynasty's cultivators to help them deal with this trouble was also a good thing. The Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators were completely annihilated. In this way, their dynasty could defeat the Azure Forest dynasty this time. How arrogant was Fong Wensheng normally? He would never have thought that he would have such a day. Chapter 1571. The cultivators in the city were dumbfounded. No one had expected the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty to be so powerful. Some of the cultivators who had the same idea of snatching the wind spirit tigers were glad that they did not make a move earlier. Otherwise, wouldn't they be looking for trouble? The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty are too powerful. Even the cultivators from the Azure Forest dynasty are no match for them. The combat power of the Tiangang dynasty is no longer in the category of a medium-sized dynasty. This is clearly a strength that only a large dynasty can have. The The cultivators from the Wu dynasty and the Cloudsword dynasty are really wise to leave so easily. I didn't understand before, but now I do. Among the three dynasties, the cultivators from the Azure Forest dynasty are the most annoying. There are countless cultivators who are unhappy with Fong Wensheng. Now that the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty have taken care of him, many cultivators are cheering in their hearts. The crowd watched the battle in front of them. There was no suspense about the outcome of the battle now. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' combat power was amazing. The three contract beasts were even more agile. They did not give the opponent any chance at all. Even the three wind spirit tigers were quietly watching the show at the side. The crowd was speechless at such a scene. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang knocked down the cultivator in front of her. Her long sword directly pierced into the opponent's body. Chi! The azure glaze sword was pulled out. It was crisp and clean. The azure glaze sword was like a work of art. It was not stained with the slightest bit of blood. Bailey Hongzhuang directly took the opponent's Chinquan bag and transferred the opponent's points to herself. Looking at the skyrocketing points, a hint of a smile appeared in her ink-black phoenix eyes. If her judgment was correct, she now had a lot of points. It would not be a problem for her to be on the top 100 list. After Bailey Hongzhuang took care of her opponent, she did not continue to attack. Instead, she waited on the other side, not far away. She believed that with everyone's strength, they could take care of their opponents. When the onlookers saw Bailey Hongzhuang standing on the side, their expressions couldn't help but change a bit. They knew that it was not because Bailey Hongzhuang did not want to help her opponents, but because she had absolute confidence in her teammates. This kind of confidence was something that not many cultivators in the entire assessment competition possessed. The golden sunlight shone on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Her white figure was even more graceful and moving. Her delicate face had a smile that could topple a city. It was shallow, but it made people think about it deeply. Bang! Mo Yunjue sent Fong Wensheng flying with a single palm strike. His handsome face was filled with indifference. Even though the sun was shining brightly, everyone still felt a trace of coldness when they saw Mo Yunjue, which made them feel surprised. Fong Wensheng's complexion became deathly pale. He had never thought that he would be defeated at the hands of a Great Dipper Dynasty cultivator. This black-clothed fellow in front of him was extremely powerful, and he was completely unable to determine Mo Yunjue's depth. From the beginning to the end, Mo Yunjue had not used his full strength when dealing with him. Every time he risked his life to increase his strength, he would realize that Mo Yunjue's strength had also increased. He was strong, but his opponent was stronger. This feeling almost caused him to break down. Chapter 1572. Mo Yunjue slowly walked towards Fong Wensheng. Fong Wensheng looked at the approaching Mo Yunjue and could not help but crawl back. At this moment, he was already regretting offending the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. If he could have left together with the cultivators of the Wu dynasty and the Cloudsword dynasty, they would not have ended up like this. The assessment was about to end, but he was going to die here. A shadow covered Fong Wensheng, and Mo Yunjue had already walked in front of him. "I beg you, don't kill me." At this moment, Fong Wensheng could no longer care about his face. He only hoped that Mo Yunjue would let him go. As long as he got out of the assessment safely, he still had a good future. Looking at Fong Wensheng, who was begging for mercy, Mo Yunjue's eyes were cold. His expression did not change at all, and there was not the slightest ripple in his black pupils. Unfortunately, it's too late. In the next moment, Mo Yunjue stabbed the sword into Fong Wensheng's body. For such a hateful guy like Fong Wensheng, he would not hesitate for a moment. After seeing Mo Yunjue act so decisively, everyone's expression changed again. The news they had received before was really correct. Never offend the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. They were not soft-hearted people. After Mo Yunjue took the points and the Chinquan bag, he walked back to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His handsome face did not have the slightest expression. He just stood there indifferently like Bailey Hongzhuang waiting for the others to finish their battle. Now that the strength of the cultivators in their team had been improved, even if they encountered cultivators from large dynasties, they did not need to worry. Therefore, they would not participate in the battle of others. Everyone needed a chance to fight. After seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue had finished their battle, Xia Jiqing could not help but say, "Boss, they have finished. We can't fall behind too much." As Xia Jiqing's voice fell, Gong Shaoqing and the others' eyes changed, and their attacks became more and more fierce. Their goal now was to shorten the distance between them and Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. The feeling of being left behind every time was not a good feeling. Boom! Yuan Jixin finished the battle and smiled. "I'm third, you lost." Gong Shaoqing and Dong Fong you finished their battle almost at the same time. After seeing that Yuan Jixin had finished, Dong Fong's eyes had a look of dissatisfaction. "Damn, I'm a few seconds slower than you again." Everyone was completely speechless when they saw the Tiangang dynasty's cultivators ending the battle so easily and even having an internal competition. This was a battle of life and death. You actually treated it as a game? This gets really big. Facing such cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. This was the atmospheres, Tians. It had to be said that this kind of feeling was really enviable. The three beasties had returned to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. This time, it was Yuan Xiaoman and Xia Jiqing again. For this point, Yuan Xiaoman and Xia Jiqing were also speechless to the extreme. "I'm not convinced. Let's fight again next time," Xia Jiqing said angrily. "I'm not convinced. Let's find another opponent." Yuan Xiaoman followed. As soon as these words came out, the onlookers had already returned to the house. This was really the fun of the strong. Chapter 1573. After dealing with the cultivators of the Azure Forest Dynasty, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked into the city and found a house and went in. The cultivators looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others who walked into the house so indifferently, and their hearts were filled with emotion. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others quickly divided the points and found that Fang Wenqing's points were much higher than the points of the other cultivators of the Azure Forest Dynasty. This Fang Wenqing is clearly a despicable and selfish fellow. Who knows, he might have taken the points of his teammates and transferred them to himself. Xia Jiqing's eyes were filled with disgust. When she thought of Fang Wenqing, she couldn't help but feel disgusted. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. As Xia Jiqing said, all of this was very possible. Everyone has been in the wild for the past few days. I think you must be tired. Let's rest in the city today and continue tomorrow. With Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone nodded. They really needed to familiarize themselves and wash away the dust on their bodies. Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the house. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, Bai Shi, and the three wind spirit tigers had gone to another room to take a bath. Since the three wind spirit tigers joined, Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi had put on the attitude of a senior to teach the three wind spirit tigers. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also smiled faintly and followed them. There were more topics to talk about between beasts. Now that so many contract beasts were together, it was a very happy thing. After Bailey Hongzhuang washed up, she entered the state of cultivation. These days, she had been vigilant outside. Now that she relaxed, she felt a lot more comfortable. She originally planned to go to the desert world to cultivate today, but the three beasts were not in the house now, so she simply cultivated by herself. After sealing the three demonic beast eggs, she had used up quite a bit of her mental strength. Mental energy was different from essence energy and could be fully recovered very quickly. It would still take a few days to completely recover. She would rest well for the next few days. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others dealt with the cultivators from the Azure Forest Dynasty, the name of the Tiangang dynasty once again resounded throughout the examination competition. Even if the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had once defeated the cultivators of the large dynasties, the teams of those large dynasties were unable to compare with the Azure Forest dynasty. Thus, The cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty had undoubtedly become the famous stepping stone of the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. For a time, all the cultivators treated the Tiangang dynasty as an extremely powerful large-scale dynasty team. Even the Ming Wu dynasty and the Cloud Sword dynasty did not want to be enemies with them, which showed how powerful the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others once again set foot on the road to the next city. However, along the way, they could clearly feel that the other cultivators were looking at them differently. Look, that's a cultivator from the Tiangang dynasty. I heard that Feng Wensheng died at their hands. Isn't that so? This news has already spread. Speak softly, don't let them hear you. Otherwise, you might have to accompany the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty in hell. Chapter 1574. Seeing this scene, the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also changed a bit. What the hell? Are they afraid of us? Xia Jiqing stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, wondering if she had heard wrongly before. Bai Junyu nodded slightly. Yes, they are afraid of us. The next moment, Xia Jiqing's face suddenly filled with a proud smile. Along the way, we were worried about how strong our opponents were, but now there are cultivators who are afraid of us. Does this count as a huge breakthrough? Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Dongfang Yu couldn't help but chuckle. If you think so, then so be it. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips were slightly raised, and she also felt that the situation was very funny. I didn't expect the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty to have such ability. It seems that there shouldn't be anyone who will trouble us when we reach the end of the road. Needless to say, it was because they had killed the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty, so everyone showed such an expression. After all, such a situation had never happened before. Our next journey will be very smooth, Mo Yunjue said with a smile. In the face of the fear of other cultivators, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't care at all. In fact, only the strong could enjoy such a gaze. They had gone from trembling in fear in the assessment competition to being so open and not being afraid of anyone. It was really a great improvement. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi were leading the three-wind spirit tigers behind everyone at the moment. The six little guys walking together were particularly eye-catching. Time passed quickly, and with the improvement of the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, there were no more cultivators who went to trouble them. Under such circumstances, everyone only felt that time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was already the day when the assessment competition was about to end. The central city. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the central city, they saw a sea of people. The central city was several times larger than any of the cities they had seen before. Even though there was a sea of people, they could all live in this city. This was the place where the assessment competition ended. Tomorrow would be the end of the competition. On the day before the assessment competition ended, the cultivators in the central city all had different expressions on their faces. Some were happy and some were worried. He had left his hometown for 2 years in order to obtain good results in the assessment competition and become a member of the sect. The cultivators who had accumulated enough points were naturally overjoyed, because their 2 years of hard work had finally yielded the results they had been looking forward to the most. However, the cultivators with low points were very worried. Back then, they had come in high spirits, but now they returned to the dynasty dejectedly. When they thought of all this, they could not help but feel worried. As for those cultivators with average points, they were seizing the last day to snatch points. As long as they could snatch points today, they would have a chance of success. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked into the central city, many pairs of eyes fell on them. 8 cultivators and 6 contracted beasts. Just this point alone was enough to make them unique and hard to forget. Chapter 1575. We've arrived at the central city. Xia Jiqing looked at the sea of people in front of her, and her pretty face couldn't help but be filled with a thick excitement. They hadn't been in a hurry all the way, and they had just arrived at the central city the day before the end of the assessment. The assessment is finally coming to an end. I've been looking at the same scenery in the small world for so long, and I'm getting tired of it. Yuan Xiaoman was also excited. Fortunately, they had survived until now, and she now wanted to return to the snow country. She was accustomed to the coldness of the snow country, and only felt that the heat in the small world was unbearable. We're finally leaving. Even Gong Xiaoqing, who had always been indifferent, had a look of emotion in his eyes at this moment. They had been living in the Shangxian continent before, so they didn't feel much about it. It was only after they left that they realized how much they missed it. We're finally here. Bailey Hongzhuang's dark phoenix eyes were filled with joy, and the corners of her mouth opened into an elegant smile. 2 years had finally passed, and, as long as she waited until tomorrow, she would be able to see Deep Beichen. Chapter 1576. The central city was different from the cities in the Shangxian continent. There was no fun place here. Except for a group of cultivators gathering here, there was nothing special. Bailey Hongzhuang followed Xia Jiqing and the others for a stroll before returning to the house. Only after the results of the assessment were out would they be able to truly relax when they returned to the Shangxian continent. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Baishir had already gone to play with the wind spirit tiger at this moment. Speaking of which, the relationship between these 6 beasts was very good. Having not slept for a long time, Bailey Hongzhuang was ready to have a good sleep tonight and relax. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to rest, suddenly there was a knock on the door. Hearing the knock on the door, Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly and immediately opened the door. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw the cultivator outside the door, her face could not help but show a touch of surprise. Mo Yunjue? For a long time, the people who knocked on their door were either Xia Jiqing or Yuan Xiaoman. She did not expect that Mo Yunjue would actually come to her today, which really surprised her. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, Mo Yunjue chuckled, surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, a little. Can I come in? Bailey Hongzhuang took a step back and smiled, of course. Mo Yunjue's smile widened a little as he walked into the house and sat at the table. Bailey Hongzhuang poured a cup of tea for Mo Yunjue and handed it to him. After being together for so long, this is the first time you have come to me. Do you want me to come to you a few more times? Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows and smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang wrinkled her nose and just smiled at Mo Yunjue, but did not answer. Well, I won't joke anymore. Mo Yunjue spread his hands. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang only had Deep Beichen in her heart, so such a joke was not suitable for her. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, but in her heart, she was guessing why Mo Yunjue came to her. Let me have a look at your point card, Mo Yunjue suddenly said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue with a slightly surprised look, and then handed her points card to Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue looked at the number on Bailey Hongzhuang's points card and said, "You have a lot of points, so it won't be a problem for you to be in the top 100. However, if you want to be first in the top 100, I'm afraid it will be a little difficult." He knew very well that Bailey Hongzhuang had taken care of her teammates a lot of the time. If it was only Bailey Hongzhuang alone, her points would be much higher. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was calm and indifferent. She said lightly, "As long as I could be in the top 100 and have good results, it's fine. It doesn't matter if I'm first or not." Now that Han Shieling would never appear again, her path in Tiangang sect would be much easier without such a big trouble. She had participated in the assessment competition to prove her strength to the people of Tiangang sect. As long as she was in the top 100, then she could become a member of Tiangang sect, and not because of Deep Beichen's protection. Mo Yunjue shook his head. Anyone who opposes you will definitely try their best to find fault with you. Your current results only prove that you are qualified to become a member of the Tiangang sect, but it is not enough to prove that you are qualified to become the young madam of the Tiangang sect. Chapter 1577. What do you mean? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but to ask. She knew that what Mo Yunjue said was true. Just like how Han Hongyi was dissatisfied with her, he would definitely find a way to find fault with her. As long as she didn't meet the requirements, they would magnify the problem. But she was too lazy to care about all of this. With Han Shiling's death, it didn't matter how Han Hongyi tried to find trouble with her, because he had no way of influencing her. As for the other problems, she couldn't guarantee that she would be able to solve them. She could only solve them one by one. In the next moment, under Bailey Hongzhuang's astonished gaze, Mo Yunjue transferred all of his points to Bailey Hongzhuang's points tablet. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask in astonishment, "What are you doing?" Mo Yunjue smiled faintly. "I've already told you before that I don't plan on joining any sections. Hence, these points are useless to me. If your ranking is high enough, there will be less resistance in the future." Bailey Hongzhuang's inky black phoenix eyes rippled as she frowned. "But you can't give me your points. Even if you don't join any other sects, having a good ranking is still a good thing for you." She believed that if Mo Yunjue was really a member of a sect, then the higher his ranking, the higher his status would be when he returned to the sect. If he didn't have any ranking, it wouldn't be a good thing. As she said this, Bailey Hongzhuang prepared to snatch the 2 points tablets from Mo Yunjue's hands. She couldn't let Mo Yunjue sacrifice so much for her. Mo Yunjue didn't let Bailey Hongzhuang snatch the points tablets away. His handsome face quietly became serious. "These points are useless to me, just like Di Beichun. Do you think that if he joined a competition, he would care about these points and rankings?" When these words were said, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. Then, her eyes suddenly changed as she understood the meaning behind Mo Yunjue's words. Chapter 1578. He had always been a man with deep thoughts and would never reveal his inner feelings in front of anyone. Just like how he had been with Bailey Hongzhuang for so long, he could not wait to pour his heart out to Bailey Hongzhuang. But Bailey Hongzhuang was unable to trust him completely. This was because he had always hidden his thoughts too deeply. Trust, this was a word that he had never stopped using. However, after meeting Bailey Hongzhuang, he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's heart could not contain him. So he only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could trust him. He did not ask for anything. He only hoped that when Bailey Hongzhuang needed help, he would be able to help. He had never cared about anything. He did not care about feelings. He did not care about friends. He did not even care about his own life. Back then, at the Falling Cloud Mountain Range, he had hoped that he would die just like that. It would also be a kind of release. Because living as a walking corpse had gradually numbed his heart. His dark life had caused him to not know what he wanted. He had always been cold-blooded. He felt that even the blood in his bones was cold. But after meeting Bailey Hongzhuang for the first time, he had the urge to understand. Only, he had come too late. The heavens had always liked to joke with him. He had never had anything he wanted, and the only time he had had someone he wanted, it did not belong to him. Perhaps a person like him who walked in the dark was suited to walk alone. When a ray of warm sunlight shone on him, he did not even know what he should do. He had never needed to participate in the assessment competition. To him, this kind of competition was just a waste of time. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had participated, so he had come as well. He was the only one who knew all of this. Even Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know his feelings until now. Now that the assessment competition was about to end, Di Beichun was about to arrive, it was time for him to leave. Before he left, he suddenly felt unreconciled. He should not have felt unreconciled. Even if he had to leave, at least he wanted Bailey Hongzhuang to understand his heart once. At least she should know that he was worthy of her trust. His hands were stained with a lot of blood, good and bad, kind and despicable, the damned innocent, all of it. However, even if he hurt the people of the world, he had never thought of hurting Bailey Hongzhuang. Since Hongzhuang wanted to be with Di Beichun, then he would give her a hand. He didn't want his beloved woman to suffer such grievances. Just like Nangong Xiujia, that kind of dirty guy was enough for him to deal with. In his heart, he knew that a guy like him, whose hand was stained with blood, was not worthy of a person like Bailey Hongzhuang. Therefore, he only wanted to protect her from afar. As long as she was happy, it was fine. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue in a daze. She never thought that Mo Yunjue would suddenly confess to her. She was caught off guard, and her heart was full of shock. Since she met Mo Yunjue, he had been helping her, appearing mysteriously, as if he was always around. She never understood why Mo Yunjue would help her like this. Xiaohei and Xiao Bai also guessed that Mo Yunjue liked her, but along the way, Mo Yunjue had never shown such emotions. Chapter 1579. However, today, Mo Yunjue had suddenly expressed all his thoughts to her. She couldn't react in time, because this was just too shocking. Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was stunned and didn't know what to say. His dark and deep eyes were filled with helplessness. He only wanted to express his feelings and didn't want to make things difficult for Bailey Hongzhuang. In the next moment, Mo Yunjue stood up and said, "I'll go back first. Don't take what I said to heart." With that, Mo Yunjue turned and walked out of the room. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue's back as he turned and left. Her mouth opened and closed, but in the end, she only said 2 words, "Thank you." Towards Mo Yunjue's feelings and help, she didn't have anything to repay him. The only thing she could say was to thank him. Mo Yunjue's figure paused for a moment, and a smile appeared on his handsome face again. However, this smile inevitably added a bit of loneliness. Until Mo Yunjue left the room and closed the door again, Bailey Hongzhuang was still immersed in Mo Yunjue's words. He had said it very simply. Towards this feeling, he didn't ask for anything in return. It was because of Mo Yunjue's calmness and selflessness that her heart became heavier. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly understood why Mo Yunjue was so defensive when he asked her if she was related to the Lan family. Mo Yunjue was stunned. Thinking about it, her defense and vigilance had already hurt Mo Yunjue's heart. He treated her with such sincerity, but she was like this suddenly. Bailey Hongzhuang understood. With Mo Yunjue's status, it was impossible for him to not get along with the cultivators in the team. It was likely that the entire team was Mo Yunjue's people. The so-called not getting along was just an excuse. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a little uncomfortable in her chest, but there was nothing she could do. She also hoped that Mo Yunjue could live well. An outstanding man like Mo Yunjue should have a woman who would treat him wholeheartedly, but she couldn't give him that. She knew that any word she said now would be too weak and wouldn't be able to comfort Mo Yunjue. Perhaps not speaking was also a good thing. She didn't give Mo Yunjue hope because she hoped that he would be able to walk out of it and find his own sky. Her sky had already been filled when Deep Baichen appeared. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the points on her card. Mo Yunjue's points were completely beyond her expectations. She couldn't even imagine how Mo Yunjue got so many points. The hand holding the card gradually closed. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was complicated. Finally, she put the card into her chinkoan bag. This was Mo Yunjue's heart, and she would cherish it. That night, there were many conflicts between cultivators in the city. Many cultivators were trying their best to plunder points. Except for some large dynasty teams that were not disturbed, many cultivators had to participate. The next day, as soon as the sky was bright, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others got up. As soon as they walked out of the door, Xia Jiqing and the others also came out. "Boss, we can get out of the small world today." Xia Jiqing's face couldn't hide the excitement. These 2 years were really tiring, and now it was finally over. Chapter 1580. Gong Xiaoqing and the others revealed smiles on their faces. In these 2 years, they had experienced countless dangers to successfully reach where they were now. In these 2 years, they had all grown a lot. They had grown from their initial immaturity to their current perseverance. The assessment competition had not only increased their strength, but it had also honed their willpower. This harvest was extremely precious. If they hadn't participated in the assessment competition, not to mention their cultivation wouldn't have improved so much, even their willpower wouldn't have been as tenacious as it was now. These benefits would gradually appear on their future cultivation path and would continue to affect them. Suddenly, Bai Jinyu frowned. Why hasn't Mo Yunjue come out yet? Dongfang Yu's eyes were filled with doubt. They had been together with Mo Yunjue for such a long time, and Mo Yunjue had never been late. It was really strange that he hadn't appeared today. Thinking of this, Dongfang Yu directly walked forward and knocked on Mo Yunjue's door. However, he found that the door wasn't locked. With a gentle push, the door opened. However, there was no sign of Mo Yunjue in the spacious room. Seeing this scene, everyone's face revealed a puzzled expression. Where did Mo Yunjue go? Today is the end of the assessment competition. Where could he have gone? This is really strange. Did he say anything to you? Everyone looked at each other. At this time, Mo Yunjue had suddenly disappeared. This was really too strange. They had been together for so long and had never seen such a thing happen. Could it be that something had happened? Thinking of this possibility, everyone couldn't help but worry. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes gradually changed. Her heart faintly had a bad premonition. Thinking of the things that Mo Yunjue had said to her yesterday, she only felt a burst of depression and pain in her heart. It was because Mo Yunjue had never asked for anything and had always been by her side to help her that she felt a burst of pain in her heart. This feeling was too deep. Mo Yunjue has already left. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. He had come to say goodbye to him yesterday. Just as he had said, Di Baichen was here, so it was time for him to go. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, Xia Jiqing and the others all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. They didn't understand why she would answer like this. The competition is ending today. Why did Mo Yunjue leave? Xia Jiqing's face was puzzled. This was too strange. Why did he leave without any movement? Dongfang Yu and the rest were also puzzled. Mo Yunjue's actions had no warning signs. It was too strange. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. He did leave. After saying that, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't want to say anything more. She turned around and walked in the direction of the top 100 list. She had no way to explain this matter at all. Just like how Mo Yunjue had been with them for so long, Mo Yunjue had never revealed his thoughts. And she would not reveal Mo Yunjue's thoughts. When everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, the surprise in their hearts was even stronger. It seemed that Hongzhuang must know everything. However, they couldn't guess what was going on behind the scenes. Chapter 1581. Bailey Hongzhuang walked at the front. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's silent expression and no longer asked. Thinking about it, Mo Yunjue must have his reasons for leaving, but they didn't know if they would have a chance to meet again in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang and her group slowly walked to the huge square in the center of the city. The square was so large that it could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. It was so empty that even talking could be heard. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived, there were already many cultivators in the city gathered here. Obviously, after staying in the small world for 2 years, everyone couldn't wait to leave. Looking at such a large square, Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but have a look of amazement on their faces. The entire assessment competition was so big, and the final square was so amazing. In the center of this square, there was a large circular platform. Above this high platform, a huge black column stood in the center, as if it was going to pierce the sky. The black column revealed a deep and dark feeling. Even when the sun shone on the black column, it still didn't reflect any light. It was as if everything was absorbed by it, mysterious and shocking. Almost all the cultivators present had their eyes fixed on this column. In a short time, everyone had been able to judge that this black column was the top 100 list. As long as their names could appear on the top 100 list, then they would have an excellent future. The cultivators in the square were constantly talking, and the whole square was extremely noisy. Bailey Hongzhuang's group stood in the middle of the crowd, and in this sea of people, they seemed too small, and it was simply difficult to find them. Compared with the joy and noise of the cultivators, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were a little silent. Mo Yunjue's sudden departure made them feel a little depressed. They had been partners for a long time, and their feelings for each other were very strong. In the distance, Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and her group, and his eyes were deep. The cultivators of the Qianfeng dynasty looked at their young master, and their expressions were different. Although they had some guesses in their hearts, they didn't dare to say it. The young lord's thoughts were not something that ordinary people could fathom. However, they all knew that the young master liked Bailey Hongzhuang. This was because the young lord had never done anything useless in all these years. Now that he was participating in the great competition, it was undoubtedly a waste of time. For 2 whole years, there were still many things that needed to be dealt with in the sect. Presumably, he had already delayed a lot. In their opinion, with their young master's ability, it was never a problem to make a woman follow him wholeheartedly. However, what the young master had done this time made them somewhat unable to comprehend. Could it be that young lord participated in the assessment to protect Bailey Hongzhuang? Wasn't this a little too incomprehensible? This was not their style of doing things, let alone their cold-blooded and heartless young master. No one understood, but they didn't dare to say anything. They just stood silently beside Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. No matter where she was, that beautiful white figure was unique and could be spotted at a glance. After such a long time, he was almost used to seeing Bailey Hongzhuang the moment he stepped out of his room. Chapter 1582. Bailey Hongzhuang searched the crowd, but could not find Mo Yunjue. She knew very well that Mo Yunjue would definitely appear in the crowd today. This was because everyone would leave this place. However, there was a sea of people here. It was too difficult to find a single person. The day before the end of the assessment, Di Beichun had already arrived outside the barrier. At this time, in front of Di Beichun's group, there was a transparent barrier in front of them, preventing them from entering. This was the barrier of the assessment. As long as the time was up, the barrier would open by itself. Unless the time was up, there was no way to open it. This was a rule set during the assessment. It was to prevent people from forcefully entering and affecting the progress of the assessment. Because of the existence of this barrier, once the assessment began, no one would be able to know what was going on inside. It could be said that life and death were up to fate. Standing outside the barrier, Di Beichun's nervous mood inexplicably calmed down. He would know the result tomorrow. These days, as the end of the assessment approached, his mood had become extremely complicated. On one hand, he was extremely excited. As long as the assessment ended, he would be able to see Hongzhuang. On the other hand, he could not help but worry about Hongzhuang's safety. He had never been so nervous and perturbed before. Under such emotions, he simply couldn't calm his heart and cultivate. Therefore, he had already headed to the location where the assessment would end. When Hongzhuang had participated in the assessment, he had said that he would come to bring Hongzhuang back. Now that he was here, he did not ask for Hongzhuang's results. He only wanted Hongzhuang to be safe and sound. After Di Beichun and the rest arrived, many people appeared one after another. Those who appeared were either from sects or aristocratic families. There was no doubt that they had extraordinary backgrounds. This assessment was a competition held by various sects to recruit disciples. However, there were also some aristocratic families' disciples who came to participate in the training. Therefore, most of these aristocratic families were here to bring their own disciples back. Di Beichun's reputation had always been resounding. Among the younger generation of cultivators, Di Beichun could be said to be a representative figure. Therefore, many people here knew him, and they all complimented each other. "Young Master Di, why are you here today?" The Yin family elder asked curiously. In every assessment competition, Tiangang sect would inevitably send the great elder, but Di Beichun, as the young lord of Tiangang sect, also came here, which was somewhat unusual. Could it be that Tiangang sect attached special importance to this year's assessment competition? Or did some extraordinary character appear in this year's competition? When he thought of this, the Yin family's elders' eyes lit up. To the top forces of the Shengxian continent, talents were extremely important. In order for a force to continue flourishing, it required an endless supply of talents. When a Yin family elder asked this question, a young man not far away, smiled and replied, "Yin family elder, there's something you don't know." "Oh." The Yin family elder raised his eyebrows in surprise. "I'd like to hear the details." This time, young Master D's fiancée also entered the assessment competition. I think young Master D is here to pick her up. Chapter 1583. Moreover, Tiangang's sect had no intention of keeping this news a secret. Therefore, many people already knew about this news. When Di Baichun brought his sweetheart back, the entire Tiangang sect was in an uproar. Almost everyone thought that Di Baichun and Han Shilling would be a couple. No one thought that things would turn out this way. Han Shilling and Bailey Hongzhuang were in constant conflict. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shilling both participated in the assessment competition. It was no wonder that Di Baichun would appear here today. Presumably, Di Baichun was also very worried about this result. Hearing this, the Yun family elder also had an epiphany. So that's how it is. Although the Yun family elder got the answer, his gaze could not help but fall on Di Baichun. He had not heard of Di Baichun's engagement. It seemed that he was really ignorant during this period of time. Di Baichun listened to the conversation between the two, but did not answer. This attitude also made them think that he had tacitly agreed. However, seeing that Di Baichun did not have the interest to talk, they did not want to touch this bad luck at the moment. To Di Baichun, Hong Zhuang was not his fiancée, but his real wife. He had already discussed with his master. After they rescued Hong Zhuang's parents, he would marry Hong Zhuang and let Hong Zhuang become the wife of the young sect master of Tiangang sect. Hong Zhuang had always been a woman with a pure heart. She just did not want him to bear the pressure, so she chose to bear it herself. She was so beautiful, so considerate, and even made people feel a little sorry for her. After the assessment competition ended, he would definitely not let Hong Zhuang suffer anymore. Time gradually passed. Finally, the barrier in front of him rotated and opened. It was as if the mirror had suddenly started to rotate. In the process of this rotation, Di Baichun saw the enchantment in front of him gradually disappear, and a side of the world appeared in front of him. His mood was unprecedentedly excited, and he stood there for a long time without moving. "Young master." Heimu couldn't help but remind them, as the surrounding people had already walked inside. He had grown up with the young lord since he was young, but he had never seen the young lord miss someone so much. Just from the young master's usual behavior, he could tell how much the young master missed the young madam. He only hoped that the young master could quickly reunite with the young madam. Upon hearing Heimu's words, Di Baichun nodded his head. Only then did he take a step forward. However, the worry in his eyes never dissipated. A group of cultivators from the heaven-devouring tower had coincidentally arrived the moment the barrier of the examination competition opened. They immediately followed the crowd and walked in. Seeing the appearance of the cultivators from the heaven-devouring tower, everyone's eyes were filled with doubts. The assessment competition this time is really strange. Not only did the young master of the Tiangang sect come, why did the people from the heaven-devouring tower come as well? The heaven-devouring tower usually does not appear in such an occasion. Even if the people from the heaven-devouring tower participate in the assessment competition, they will not ask for any results. This time, they actually sent people to welcome them. This is really strange. Could it be that some big shot from the heaven-devouring tower is participating in the assessment competition? It's impossible for the big shot from the heaven-devouring tower to participate in the assessment competition. Everyone was discussing spiritedly, and they were extremely puzzled. The heaven-devouring tower was an extremely special existence in the Shengxian continent. It was a force completely shrouded in darkness. Chapter 1584. Normally, everyone would keep a certain distance from it. There were even some righteous sects that disdained such an existence. However, countless people sought the help of the Heaven Slaughter Tower every day. There were too many things in this world that could not be done openly. Therefore, no matter how much everyone disdained the Heaven Slaughter Tower, the Heaven Slaughter Tower still did things their own way. They were still one of the most powerful forces in the Shengxian continent. No one would provoke the Heaven Slaughter Tower. Once they did, it would be like stirring up a hornet's nest. No one could bear the consequences. D. Bachan's gaze swept past the cultivators of the Heaven Slaughter Tower. He had also sought the help of the Heaven Slaughter Tower a few days ago, but the result was that the young master was not around and could not help for the time being. Now, he saw the cultivators of the Heaven Slaughter Tower in this assessment competition. Could it be that their young master was in this assessment competition? Although this idea was extremely absurd, Deep Bachan had a faint premonition in his heart that perhaps everything was as he thought. Everyone walked into the whirlpool and directly jumped down from midair. In the central square, a group of cultivators were waiting excitedly. Suddenly, an energy fluctuation attracted everyone's attention. Everyone's eyes were fixed in midair. A whirlpool appeared in the cloud. Then, the whirlpool gradually grew bigger, like a mysterious and magnificent seven-colored cloud. Under everyone's shocked gaze, a huge spatial passage appeared out of thin air, as if someone had poked a big hole in the sky. Seeing this scene, everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. This was too shocking. Previously, everyone had only been teleported. In the blink of an eye, they had already appeared in the small world. However, they had never seen anyone directly tear open a spatial crack. With the appearance of this vortex, figures jumped down from above. Dazzling light shrouded them. Everyone could only see the figures clearly, but they could not see their true faces. The location of this vortex corresponded to the high platform in the central square. Figures appeared on the high platform one after another. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 people had appeared on the high platform. Seeing this, the eyes of all the cultivators present were filled with amazement and yearning. If their judgment was correct, these cultivators on the high platform were the representatives of various sects. Sects, that was something that they could only dream of but never reach before. Now, after 2 years of hard work, they could finally meet the people of the sect. The cultivators of some large empires had some understanding of each sect. The more powerful the empire was, the more cultivators there would be who could become a sect's disciple. So, even though sects were far away for cultivators from large dynasties, it wasn't impossible. But to the cultivators of some small and medium-sized dynasties, it was no different than an existence of legend. At this moment, they actually had the opportunity to meet some of the important figures in the sect. Even if they didn't have the qualifications to become a member of the sect, they would still have something to brag about when they returned. Soon, the 20 or so people stood on the high platform. Even though there were more than 20 people standing on top of the huge circular platform, it still seemed empty. In the next moment, everyone heard a slight sound. Then, a table and chairs appeared on the high platform. Chapter 1585. After everyone was seated, an old man appeared in front of everyone. With a wave of his hand, the dazzling light in front of everyone disappeared. The cultivators below the high platform could finally see the cultivator on the high platform clearly. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them in amazement. Their curious gazes all looked towards the person sitting on the high platform. Everyone could only feel a strong wave of origin energy emanating from the figure on the high platform. Just this feeling alone was enough to make people gasp in amazement. This is the elder of the sect. This origin energy fluctuation is too shocking. The sect is indeed different from the rest. Just this aura alone is enough to make people gasp in amazement. Oh my God, if I become a cultivator in the sect, will I be so powerful in the future? For a moment, everyone's heart was filled with a strong yearning. This kind of powerhouse was their goal in the future. There were only about 10 cultivators sitting on the high platform. Among them, there were only 10 who represented the sect. Naturally, there were more than 10 sects, but only 10 of them were qualified to sit here. This was because these 10 people represented the top 10 super sects. Only the top 100 cultivators were qualified to enter the top 10 sections. Those who were not on the top 100 had the opportunity to enter a sect. They could still enter a small sect. Although small sects and big sects were both sects, Whether it was the sect strength, influence, or cultivation resources, they could not be compared to the top 10 sects. In the past, the top 10 of the assessment competition were free to choose which sect to enter. As for the remaining 90, they were determined to enter the top 10 sections. No matter what, at least they could enter the top 10 sections. As for those who were below the top 100, they could only rely on their luck. Although these big sects required a lot of manpower, they were more inclined towards quality than quantity. Moreover, they did not only select talents through the assessment competition. Baichun sat in his seat. In the past, the first elder would come to recruit talents in the assessment competition. However, this time it was his turn. Originally, the first elder wanted to come with him, but he rejected him. He was very clear about the first elder's dissatisfaction with Hong Zhuang. If the first elder came today, he would definitely stir up trouble again. He didn't want the great elder to ruin his reunion with Hong Zhuang. At this moment, an elder in his 60s stood in the center of the high platform. He wore a gray robe and his hair was white. He gave off an aura of vicissitude and majesty. This person was one of the 10 great sects, Limitless Palace's elder, Gu Taihong. He was very experienced and powerful, so everyone tacitly agreed to let him say the opening words. Today is the day of the competition. 2 years ago, all of you came here. Through 2 years of hard work, killing, and training, I believe that all of you have made great progress. No matter how high or low your points are, I want to tell you that those who have made it this far are all winners. Gu Taihong's voice was embellished. It was clearly transmitted into the ears of every cultivator present. As soon as he said that, the eyes of the young cultivators present lit up with excitement. Chapter 1586. Along the way, fighting, escaping, the intertwining of blood and sweat, the promotion of climbing, the fall of their teammates, impacted their hearts again and again. How many times did they want to give up, but couldn't? How many times did they grit their teeth and insist on hunting monsters? Until today, Gu Taihong's words undoubtedly gave them too much affirmation. Even if the past 2 years have been very hard, only through such experience can you grow better. When you go back, your dynasty, your family, your relatives will be proud of you. So, do you think it's all worth it? It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. Wave after wave of voices swept out from the central square. Everyone felt as if they had an endless amount of energy in their bodies. Back then, they had risked their lives to come here, all for the sake of such glory. Seeing the crowd so excited, the elders on the high platform also showed a gratified smile on their faces. The young people's ambition made them unable to help but be infected. They had to admit that Gu Taihong's words were very powerful. Listening to such words, everyone seemed to see themselves struggling in the past. At the beginning, they also experienced such a scene and eventually became elders respected by everyone. Compared to the joy of the other elders, Baichun was somewhat absent-minded. His eyes had been turning around in the crowd, looking for the white figure that he had been dreaming of. However, there were too many cultivators at the scene. It was too difficult to find a single person among the densely packed crowd. However, he believed that no matter how many people there were, he could still find his beloved Hong Zhuang at a glance. Because, no matter when, Hong Zhuang was a special existence in his eyes. At the same time, Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others also noticed the existence of Baichun. In their line of sight, Baichun was still wearing a pale, golden robe. His face was as handsome as a knife. His long eyebrows reached his temples, and his narrow eyes were deep. He was like an impeccable sculpture, making people unable to look away. There was a touch of excitement in Xia Jiqing's eyes. "Boss, look, young Master D is already here." Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were locked on Baichun's body. After not seeing him for 2 years, he was the same as before. The only change was that his edges were more distinct, and his deep eyes had become more determined. There was a happy smile on her beautiful face. Baichun said that he would come to pick her up, and now he really came. Gong Shaoqing and the others' eyes also fell on Baichun. This was the gap between Baichun and them. Di Bei-chun, who was sitting on a high platform, seemed to have infinite brilliance shining on his body. He was noble, dazzling, and noble. After Yuan Xiaoman and Yuan Jixin saw Di Bei-chun sitting on the high platform, their faces were full of shock. When Di Bei-chun and Bailey Hongzhuang went to the snow country together, none of them knew that Di Bei-chun was the young lord of Tiangang sect. This news was simply too shocking for them. He Mu's eyes kept scanning the crowd, but there were too many people, and he couldn't find the young lady at all. He kept praying in his heart, only hoping that the young lady would be safe and not be hurt by Han Shilling. Only when the young lady was by the young lord's side could the young lord be truly happy. Chapter 1587. While He Mu was feeling anxious, Di Bei-chun's gaze had already focused on a white figure in the distance. When he saw this white figure, Di Bei-chun's originally tense heart instantly relaxed. All of his worries and nervousness disappeared, leaving behind only excitement and joy. Even though the distance between them was very far, with just a quick glance, he was already certain that it was Hongzhuang. In this world, a woman like Hongzhuang was an extremely rare existence. Her every frown, smile, anger, and anger were all so different from others. Even her posture was an existence that stood out from the rest of the world. Bailey Hongzhuang was staring at Di Bei-chun. Suddenly, she discovered that Di Bei-chun's gaze had also turned towards her. The smile in her eyes couldn't help but deepen. Separated by a distance, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. All of their thoughts were reflected in this smile. Not far away, Mo Yunjue also noticed the gaze of Di Bei-chun and Bailey Hongzhuang. He had to admit that Di Bei-chun was also extremely sincere towards Bailey Hongzhuang. If not, he wouldn't have been able to find Bailey Hongzhuang in the vast sea of people with just a glance. If his opponent was an ordinary cultivator, then he might still have a chance to fight, but his opponent was Di Bei-chun, so this chance was likely to disappear. He didn't think that his strength or other aspects were inferior to Di Bei-chun. Just comparing his status with Di Bei-chun, presumably most people would choose Di Bei-chun. Moreover, Di Bei-chun was so sincere. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bei-chun looked at each other, the gazes of many women also fell on Di Bei-chun. There were many people on the high platform, but it was undeniable that Di Bei-chun was the most dazzling existence among them. Heavens! Who is that golden-robed young master? He was simply too handsome. I'm going to be mesmerized by him. He's about the same age as us, but he's able to sit on a high platform. His identity must be extraordinary. You are ignorant. The person above is the young lord of Tiangang sect. Di Bei-chun, young lord of Tiangang sect? After someone revealed Di Bei-chun's identity, the women in the crowd became even more excited. Originally, they had only thought that Di Bei-chun was a young elder of some sect. Once his identity had changed to that of a young sect leader, it would be even more incredible. Young sect master, what kind of powerful existence was that? If they were able to become young sect master's sweetheart, why would they need to work so hard like now? That was young sect mistress. What kind of noble status was that? For a time, many women tidied up their hair and looked at Di Bei-chun. They only hoped that they could be the lucky Cinderella. At the same time, a woman standing in front of Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but exclaim, "Young sect master is looking at me. He's smiling at me." Seeing this scene, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but laugh out loud. This girl was too funny. Di Bei-chun was obviously smiling at the boss. Her imagination was really good. Boss, Di Bei-chun's charm is a bit too amazing. Just a smile, and these women are already dizzy. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but sigh. A man like Di Bei-chun was too monstrous. Except for the boss, who was a perfect woman, who could control him, other women simply didn't have that ability. Chapter 1588. Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Yuan Xiaoman also nodded. When she first saw Di Bei-chun, she already felt that Di Bei-chun was a very charming man. Although there were many men in the world, a man like Di Bei-chun who could be noticed at a glance was really rare. When she didn't know Di Beichen's identity, she already felt that Di Beichen was a very charming man. Not to mention that Di Beichen was the young sect master of Tiangang's sect. With all these added up, there were only a few men like Di Beichen in the entire Shangxian continent. Yuan Xiaoman couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Fortunately, Boss was also good enough. The two of them together were really a match made in heaven. Yuan Jixin's gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang also changed a bit. If he didn't understand it before, now he finally understood why Boss had been working so hard. Not to mention women. Even men would feel ashamed of their inferiority to Boss's fighting spirit. Now it seemed that the pressure on Boss was much greater than them. The Yuan family was also a big family in the Snow Country. It was very difficult for ordinary people to marry into the Yuan family, let alone Boss becoming the young sect master of Tiangang sect. There weren't so many fairy tales in this world. How many lovers were broken up like this? However, in his view, although Boss's background couldn't be compared with Di Beichun, Boss's potential and strength were not bad. In the past 2 years, Boss's progress was enough to shock people. Among all the cultivators who participated in the assessment, there were very few who could compare with Boss in terms of improvement. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other on the high platform, Gu Taihong's speech continued. I believe that everyone has an understanding of the rules of the assessment. Everything is determined by your points. The top 100 can enter the top 10 sects, and the top 10 can freely choose which sect to enter. With Gu Taihong's voice, everyone's eyes lit up again. They were also curious about their final results. Since everyone is gathered in this central square, then let us witness your results in the past 2 years. Gu Taihong's right hand slightly raised, and everyone's eyes fell on the huge and thick list of the top 100. In the next moment, the representatives of the major sects stood up, and the Yuan Li in their body surged out in an instant, turning into a ray of light that shot towards the top of the pillar. The representatives of the top 10 sects shot out 10 rays of light from their hands and fell on the top 100 list together. Suddenly, a bright light shone from the top 100 list, illuminating the whole world. Di Beichun and the others retracted their elemental power, and their eyes fell on the top 100 list. In the next moment, under everyone's gaze, red words slowly appeared at the bottom of the top 100 rankings. 100th place, Zhao Xingwen. As Gu Taihong's voice rang out, a voice of ecstasy came from the crowd. Ah, it's me. It's me. I to the top 100 list. Looking at Zhao Xingwen, who was almost crazy with excitement, everyone couldn't help but feel envious. Although Zhao Xingwen was only the last in the top 100 list, it was enough of an honor. How many cultivators participated in the assessment? To be able to enter the top 100 list of the assessment was proof of one's strength. Chapter 1589. After the 100th name appeared, the name of the 99th cultivator also appeared in everyone's sight. Every time Gu Taihong said a name, there would be a sound of surprise from the crowd. There was also a nervous look in the eyes of the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. They did not know what their final results would be. After all, this was related to their future. They heard what Gu Taihong said clearly. Only those who entered the top 100 were eligible to enter the Tiangang sect. If they did not become a member of the top 100, even if they were Di Beichen's friends, they still could not enter the Tiangang sect. Because the Tiangang sect was a sect with strict rules, cultivators who did not have enough strength could not enter at all. Di Beichen, as the young sect master of the Tiangang sect, naturally could not break the rules of his own sect. As Gu Taihong said more and more names, the atmosphere at the scene became more and more tense, which meant that they had fewer chances. Xia Jiqing and others also had a nervous look on their faces. Until now, their names had not appeared. Could it be that their points were not enough? This possibility was not impossible. After all, the number of cultivators participating in the assessment competition was terrifying. It was extremely difficult to be in the top 100. With so many cultivators present, the competition was naturally very fierce. They originally thought that their points were already a lot, but until now, they had not heard their names. They could not help but feel nervous. 50th place, Yuan Xiaoman. Gu Taihong's voice sounded again, but this voice was no different from the sound of nature for the cultivators of the Tiangang sect. They had not heard their names, so they only thought that their points were too little. They did not expect that their rankings were very good. Yuan Xiaoman was the person with the lowest points in their team. Part of the reason was that Yuan Xiaoman joined the Tiangang dynasty team later. Previously, she did not get many points when she was with the cultivators of the Snow Origin dynasty, so she was the person with the lowest points among the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. It's me. My name. Yuan Xiaoman excitedly took Bai Junyu's hand, and her pretty face was full of excitement. From the day she participated in the assessment competition, she hoped that she could succeed and become a member of the sect. As for the fear of being ranked in the top 100, that was something she didn't even dare to say out loud. This was because she was worried that she would be ridiculed for overestimating herself if she spoke of this idea. She never thought that she would actually become a member of the top 100. Suddenly being grabbed by Yuan Xiaoman, Bai Junyu was also stunned for a moment. He looked at Yuan Xiaoman in surprise, and his expression revealed a bit of embarrassment. Yuan Xiaoman was also stunned after noticing Bai Junyu's gaze. She immediately let go of Bai Junyu's hand and looked to the other side in embarrassment. She was just immersed in her excitement and forgot about this matter. When Yuan Jixin saw this scene, he couldn't help but smile. His sister had always been carefree, and now she was so complacent that she would do such a thing. However, in his opinion, if Yuan Xiaoman could be together with Bai Junyu, it would be an excellent choice. Chapter 1590. Xia Jiqing's eyes looked between Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman. Her expression could not help but become complicated, and there was a trace of hurt in the depths of her eyes. The original joy of being on the list seemed to have disappeared in this short moment, and an unspeakable sadness and loneliness spread in her heart. Yuan Xiaoman held Bai Junyu's hand, and this scene kept appearing in her mind. Her heart was unspeakably uncomfortable. Gong Shaoqing and the others also fell into silence. They did not expect such a scene to suddenly happen. It was really unexpected. Speaking of this, the relationship between Bai Junyu, Xia Jiqing, and Yuan Xiaoman, they really did not know what to do. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were also looking at Bai Junyu and the other two. She always knew that Bai Junyu liked Xia Jiqing, but she did not expect that they had not come together in 2 years, and the situation had become so complicated. Now she also knew that Yuan Xiaoman also liked Bai Junyu. If this relationship was not determined quickly, the three of them would be hurt if it continued. If she did not see it, the person in Bai Junyu's heart should still be Jiqing. However, although Jiqing's character was very lively, she was extremely shy in the face of feelings and had never shown it. Although the hurt in Jiqing's eyes just now was hidden from many people, it did not escape her eyes. Just this point alone, she could be sure that Jiqing had Bai Junyu in her heart. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes could not help but fall on Bai Junyu. She already understood the feelings between Jiqing and Xiaoman. The most important thing now was Bai Junyu's thoughts. After leaving the small world, she had to find a time to ask Bai Junyu or find other men to help her ask for his opinion. Whether it was Xia Jiqing or Yuan Xiaoman, they were all her good sisters. She did not want any of them to be hurt. If one of them was destined to be hurt, it was better to hurt sooner rather than later. If this problem was solved early, they could be closer to happiness. Although there was an idea in her heart, Bailey Hongzhuang did not show it on her face. She just smiled and said, "It seems that our results are very good." The slightly embarrassed anger suddenly became active with Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Yeah, Xiaoman is ranked 50th. Then everyone's ranking should be higher. Yuan Jixin couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. Now that he was on the top 100, not only would his future be bright, even his family would be honored. As long as one cultivator from the family became a member of the sect, the family would be able to obtain abundant cultivation resources, making the family even more powerful. He now felt that the reason why he and Xiao Man could reach this step was because of Yuan Hongyang and Yuan Liqing. If they didn't get to know Boss, they wouldn't have gotten to know Boss during the assessment. In that case, not to mention becoming a cultivator on the top 100 list, whether or not they could walk out of the battlefield alive would be a problem. But now, he and Xiao Man's future was filled with infinite hope. Dongfang Yu chuckled. Our harvest this time is really not small. 45th place, Yuan Jixin. As everyone was talking, Yuan Jixin's name sounded out from the high platform. Yuan Jixin couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. To him, this ranking was a great surprise. Chapter 1591. 30th place, Xia Jiqing. 29th place, Bai Junyu. 28th place, Dongfang Yu. 27th place, Gong Shaoqing. Under the astonished gazes of the cultivators, the names of Xia Jiqing and the others rang out one after another. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had always been famous in the assessment competition. On one hand, it was because of their strength. On the other hand, it was because they were only cultivators of a medium-sized dynasty, but they were able to achieve such results. Regardless of prejudice, everyone had to admit that the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were really powerful. How many medium-sized dynasty teams were participating in the assessment competition? But to be able to achieve such results, there was no other team other than the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. Just this point alone had proven their strength because they could do what others couldn't. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty are going against the heavens. A team of a medium-sized dynasty has such a strong score. The worst one is already 50th place. This result is simply shocking. Yes, this means that all the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty are on the top 100 list. In the history of the assessment competition, I'm afraid that such a situation has only happened a few times. Isn't that so? Even for large dynasty teams, there are very few cultivators in the entire team who can climb the top 100 list. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty are really going to be famous this time. I really envy Yuan Jixin and Yuan Xiaoman. They only joined the Tiangang dynasty team later. Why didn't I join the team at the beginning? Otherwise, wouldn't my name be on the top 100 list now? The cultivators were all regretful. They were not envious of the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty team, but the cultivators who joined halfway made them envious, who made them not have such good luck. However, before this, none of them knew that the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were so abnormal. It's strange. Why are the names of the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty so closely together? Could it be that their points are about the same? Aren't the four people who are connected together originally cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty? Maybe their points are evenly distributed. When a cultivator guessed this point, the group of cultivators was dumbfounded. If it was really like this, then this Heavenly Dipper Dynasty's team was truly too domineering. Everyone knew that even cultivators in the same team would usually be calculative. As for the matter of sharing points, it was simply impossible. This was because everyone had their own selfish motives. However, the points of Xia Jiqing and the others clearly prove this point. If it wasn't for the points, the results wouldn't be so close. For a time, everyone's envy of the Tiangang dynasty cultivators deepened. Perhaps it was because they couldn't do it that they were even more envious. How are Bailey Hongzhuang's results? Maybe Bailey Hongzhuang is 26th. Bailey Hongzhuang is so powerful. I believe that her ranking is not only 26th. Basically, every team's captain had the highest points. This was an indisputable fact. If his teammates could all reach the top 20, he believed that the captain's ranking would definitely reach the top 10. When they thought of this ranking, everyone was even more surprised. Chapter 1592. Compared to the envy of the cultivators, Xia Jiqing and the others looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with some worry. For them, they were already very happy to have such a ranking. However, for Bailey Hongzhuang, such a ranking was not enough. Because only the top 10 cultivators on the list could have the opportunity to choose their own sect, the other cultivators could only draw lots to decide. Boss wanted to prove her strength to the cultivators of Tiangang's sect, so she needed to get into the top 10. With the character of Han Hongyi, that old fox, as long as Boss did not get such results, he would definitely find a way to find fault. They all knew that Hong Zhuang's points were higher than theirs. Because of the existence of the three beasts, Hong Zhuang's points were naturally higher. However, there was a limit to the points. At most, she could get into the top 10. It was very difficult to get into the top 10. What should they do? Xia Jiqing and the others could not help but frown. If they had known earlier, they would have given some of their points to Hong Zhuang. In this way, Hong Zhuang's ranking could be higher, and the obstacles in the future would be reduced. Gu Taihong was still reading the names. And, as everyone expected, the 26th place was not Bailey Hongzhuang. Xia Jiqing stood beside Bailey Hongzhuang, her pretty face showing a bit of anxiety. She wanted to speak, but did not know what to say. After all, in this situation, no matter what she said, it was useless, because it was too late. Feeling everyone's concerned eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, and there was a bit of a reassuring taste in her smile. She could not help but think of Mo Yunjue in her mind. As Mo Yunjue said, her points were indeed not enough. Along the way, except for the cultivators who came to find trouble with her, she robbed their points. The rest of her points were obtained by hunting beasts. Therefore, their points could not be compared with those who robbed the cultivators' points. Everything Mo Yunjue said was right. It was because of this that Mo Yunjue gave her the points. These points were not only a form of help to her, but also a form of deep affection. So many points were completely beyond her expectations. She felt that it was very likely that these points were not Mo Yunjue's alone, but the points of the entire Qianfeng dynasty. Only in this way could there be so many points, so many that it was a bit amazing. Everyone was relieved after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's calm look. Hong Zhuang had already been mentally prepared, so they did not need to worry. However, the next scene made Xia Jiqing and the others surprised, because Gu Taihong had already read the names of the cultivators who were ranked in the top 10, but he had not read the name of Bailey Hongzhuang. Didn't this mean that Bailey Hongzhuang was in the top 10? Thinking of this, the faces of Xia Jiqing and the others all showed a light of excitement. As long as Hong Zhuang could enter the top 10, then the resistance would undoubtedly be reduced a lot. After hearing the results of Xia Jiqing and the others, He Mu could not help but show a happy smile on his face. Young master, young madam's friends have good results. Before, he was worried that the results of the young madam's group would not be good. After all, he also knew the difficulty of the assessment competition. It was not an easy thing to climb to the top 100. Chapter 1593. Di Beichen's deep starry eyes were filled with a slight smile. His Hong Zhuang was really extraordinary. In such a dangerous situation, not only was she safe, but she also got such a good result. It was really amazing. He knew that his Hong Zhuang had always been a great person. It seemed that in the past 2 years, a lot of things had happened to Hong Zhuang. He was very clear about the strength of Gong Shaoqing and the others. If there were no special opportunities, with their previous strength and talent, it would not be enough to get such a result. He was almost certain that they must have experienced something special and obtained a fortuitous encounter. I don't know how young madam's results are. He Mu's face was full of expectations. Xia Jiqing and the others could get such results. Presumably young madam's results would be better. Di Beichen's lips evoked a happy smile. With the current situation, he could already conclude that Hong Zhuang's results would not be bad. However, as Gu Taihong read out the names one by one, when only the top 10 names were not read out, He Mu could not help but frown. This situation seemed a bit strange. Young master, why haven't I heard Miss Han's name yet? It was reasonable to say that among the cultivators who represented Tiangang's sect to participate in the assessment, the results of Xia Jiqing and the others were undoubtedly relatively low, and the results of Wu Yuexin and the others were more beneficial. Now there were only 10 places left. Miss Han could appear in these 10 places, but Wu Yuexin and the others should not. It was just that they had not heard their names in the top 100. Were their results very bad this time? Hearing He Mu's words, Di Beichen's expression could not help but change a bit. The dark and deep eyes became deeper, like the sea of the night, deep and boundless, making people unable to see through them. Seeing that Di Beichen did not speak, He Mu also closed his mouth. In fact, the young master was very polite to Miss Han before, but after Miss Han made trouble again and again, the young master changed his attitude. Speaking of which, he also felt that Miss Han was too much. He already knew that Miss Han had come to participate in the assessment this time to deal with young madam. It was precisely because of this that young master had been so worried for the past 2 years. He was worried that young madam would be in danger. I'm afraid that young master no longer has any feelings for Miss Han, only disgust and disdain. To be honest, he also hated Miss Han's bossy manner. She was usually very considerate in front of young sect master, but he had personally witnessed Miss Han's prowess. Thus, he had never wished for Miss Han to become the young madam. In comparison, the current young madam was much better. At least, everything young madam did was very sincere. Di Beichen scanned the crowd, but he didn't find Han Shilling. To him, Han Shilling was not as special as Hong Zhuang, whom he could see at a glance. However, he was also certain that Han Shilling was not among them. He and Han Shilling grew up together, so he knew Han Shilling's character very well. If Han Shilling was really among the crowd, then under such circumstances, she would have already walked in front of him, because she had always been a girl who liked to be in the limelight. Chapter 1594. Han Shilling was not in the crowd. When Di Beichen realized this, he already understood in his heart. At this moment, all the cultivators were gathered in the central square. Han Shilling was not there, which meant that Han Shilling was no longer in the assessment. In other words, Han Shilling was dead. Although he did not see it with his own eyes, Di Beichen had already concluded the result in his heart. As for who killed Han Shilling, he did not care. He once gave Han Shilling a chance. As long as she could stop doing useless things, she would still be a very famous woman in Tiangang sect. However, Han Shilling was not willing and even chased Hong Zhuang to the assessment. For such a result, he had also guessed it. His heart was full of sighs and regret. But such a result was chosen by Han Shilling herself. Now that things had come to this point, it was time for the first elder to stop. At this point, Di Beichen no longer thought about it. Perhaps all of this was destined. 10th place, Cheng Hafeng. 9th place, as Gu Taiyong read the names one by one, the weight of the top 10 cultivators and the bottom 90 cultivators had a big gap. The assessment was a gathering of geniuses. To be able to stand out among so many cultivators, this proved that they were geniuses among geniuses. 3rd place, Xiang Kangwen. When Gu Taiyong read the 3rd place, Bailey Hongzhuang's name was still not read out. Xia Jiqing and the others could not help but be dumbfounded. Hongzhuang's points were higher than theirs, which proved that Hongzhuang's ranking was absolutely not lower than theirs. However, the 3rd place was not Bailey Hongzhuang. Didn't that mean that Bailey Hongzhuang was either 2nd or 1st place? When they thought of this, their hearts could not help but be excited. Who would have thought that Hongzhuang would get such a good result? Wasn't this a little too shocking? Oh my God, boss actually has such good results. He's really going to be famous now. Xia Jiqing couldn't hide the excitement on her face. What a great result. That old man Han Hongyi can't find any fault with him anymore. Such a result is already the best proof of his strength. Bai Junyu heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the situation was much better than they had imagined. Even if that Han Shilling is still alive, her ranking will never be higher than boss, Yuan Xiaoman said with a smile. However, just as Xia Jiqing and the others were rejoicing, Gong Xiaoqing could not help but frown. Why haven't I heard Mo Yunjue's name yet? Although Mo Yunjue had joined their team later on, they believed that with Mo Yunjue's strength, his points would definitely not be small. But even so, he still hadn't heard Mo Yunjue's name. This was a little strange. Could it be that Mo Yunjue is second or first place? Dong Fanyu pondered. He always felt that Mo Yunjue's departure was a little strange. Not only the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty, but Cheng Hufeng and the others' eyes also fell on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Until now, Bailey Hongzhuang's name had not been read, but they were already certain that Bailey Hongzhuang was either second or first place. Such a result was enough to make every cultivator present envious. Chapter 1595. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang got Fang Wenqing's points, it should not be enough for her to get such a ranking, because the higher the ranking, the greater the gap between the points. What's more, there was still Mo Yunjue. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue took the first and second place? Thinking of this possibility, Cheng Hafeng and Yu Junfei could not help but take a breath of cold air. If it was really such a result, then the results of the Tiangang dynasty were too heaven-defying. Second place, Gu Jianzhong. Along with Gu Taihong's voice, everyone only saw that on the list, a name that was a bit bigger than the cultivators below clearly appeared. A cheer broke out in the crowd, and the cultivators in Gu Jianzhong's team were all overjoyed. Such a result, no matter when, was a testimony of strength. However, Gu Jianzhong was not so happy. He thought that his points would be first, but he did not expect that there would be someone who had more points than him. Hearing Gu Jianzhong's name, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty could not help but be dumbfounded. Why is there no Mo Yunjue's name? Did we miss it? Xia Jiqing could not help but wonder. This was too strange. Mo Yunjue's points should be higher than theirs. Now, there's only one first place left. Gong Xiaoqing's expression was a bit complicated. This situation made them somewhat unable to understand. This proved that the last name was either Bailey Hongzhuang or Mo Yunjue. After seeing everyone's incredulous look, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said, Mo Yunjue gave his points to me. As soon as these words came out, Xia Jiqing and the others were dumbfounded. Pairs of eyes looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise, only wondering if they had heard wrongly. Boss, Missouri Yunjue gave his points to you? Then he... Xia Jiqing did not say the following words, but everyone already understood. If Mo Yunjue gave his points to Bailey Hongzhuang, didn't that mean that Mo Yunjue would not have any ranking? Why did Mo Yunjue do this? Why did Mo Yunjue suddenly leave? For a moment, everyone only felt that they could not understand. With their understanding of Hongzhuang, it was absolutely impossible for her to take Mo Yunjue's points. Then there was only one possibility. Mo Yunjue voluntarily gave it to her. As everyone knew, cultivators came to participate in the assessment competition in order to obtain the qualifications to enter a sect. Mo Yunjue had even given up on the points. Did that mean he didn't plan to enter a sect at all? If he did not intend to enter the sect, then why would Mo Yunjue participate in the assessment competition? Everyone was at a loss. This really gave them quite a shock. They had been with Mo Yunjue for so long, but they had never heard Mo Yunjue talk about this. Facing everyone's surprised eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said, he doesn't need it. With Mo Yunjue's identity, he did not need such a ranking and points, so he gave all his points to her in order to ensure that she could get first place. Even if she did not know how many points the second place had, she could predict that the second place's points would be very different from hers. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the doubts in Xia Jiqing and the others' eyes did not dissipate, but became more intense. Why did Mo Yunjue not need it? Chapter 1596. First place, Bailey Hongzhuang. When Gu Taihong read this name, his voice was obviously louder. The first place of the top 100 rankings had always been an extraordinary existence. In the past, the first place of the top 100 rankings were mostly men. There were very few women who obtained first place. Moreover, Gu Taihong was very familiar with this name. Wasn't this the young palace master who the palace master ordered him to find? Originally, he was very puzzled about the young palace master's results in the assessment competition. He didn't expect the young palace master to be the first place of the assessment competition. Even if he felt that the young palace master's results should be good, this first place still surprised him. Sure enough, the palace master's vision had always been excellent. Everyone didn't know that Gu Taihong raised his voice because he was too happy. They only thought that the weight of this first place was different, so there was such a performance. In the next moment, under everyone's shocked eyes, a bright golden light appeared at the top of the top 100 rankings. This font was far larger than the other rankings. This different color suddenly became the brightest color, making people unable to ignore it. The eyes of the entire Central Plaza's cultivators were focused on Bailey Hongzhuang. First place. Bailey Hongzhuang was actually first place. Everyone had long known that the strength of the Tiangang dynasty's cultivators was not simple, but they didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be able to obtain first place. This result was too shocking. My God, the Tiangang dynasty's first place is actually Bailey Hongzhuang. This is a bit too shocking. This time, the Tiangang dynasty is really going to be popular. With such a ranking, Bailey Hongzhuang can't be mentioned in the same breath in the future. Look, the eyes of all the sect elders have landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. I'm afraid Bailey Hongzhuang will become the target of the sect elders. The value of the first place of the assessment competition was far from what other cultivators could compare to. The first place of every assessment competition was the target of recruitment by the sect. Being able to recruit the first place was also beneficial to the sect. Dark horse. This word appeared in the minds of all the cultivators. The performance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could only be described as a dark horse. Darko was also dumbfounded. He had never thought that young madam would win the first place. This result was really not an ordinary good result. Before the assessment competition ended, who would have thought that young madam would achieve such results? I'm afraid even young master didn't think of this, right? Heimu's heart was filled with joy. At this moment, the first elder and the rest could no longer find any flaws. Young madam not only used her results to prove her qualifications to enter Tiangang sect, but also proved her extraordinary strength and talent. When Di Beichan found out about Bailey Hongzhuang's results, his deep eyes were filled with astonishment and surprise. His Hongzhuang had always made him so proud. As the results of the top 100 rankings were revealed, the elders of the various sects could not help but discuss among themselves. Others did not know how many points were, but they knew. After seeing the difference between Bailey Hongzhuang and the second place, they could not help but be dumbfounded. This was simply a huge chasm. They had organized so many assessment competitions and had never seen such a high number of points. Bailey Hongzhuang's points were simply too exaggerated. Chapter 1597. This Bailey Hongzhuang is really not simple. The number of points she has is really amazing. She is the cultivator with the highest points in the assessment competition. It seems that her strength and talent are also not simple. If she is trained well, she will become a great talent in the future. For the elders of the various sects, they did not care how Bailey Hongzhuang obtained her points. In their eyes, as long as they could get points, it was their ability. If it was obtained by hunting monsters, then it was what the cultivator deserved, and it also helped them solve a lot of problems. If it was obtained by plundering, then it proved that the strength of the cultivator was strong enough because she could snatch the points from so many cultivators and still live until now. For a time, the elders were constantly calculating in their hearts. No matter what, this Bailey Hongzhuang, they must find ways to recruit her. This was a rare genius that was hard to come by in 100 years. If they missed it like this, they were afraid that they would inevitably be reprimanded by the sect master when they returned to the sect. The number of disciples recruited by the major sects was not many, but for the top cultivators, the competition between them was also very fierce. After all, if the sect had one more excellent disciple, their strength would increase a bit, and if their opponents had one more excellent disciple, their pressure would increase a bit, which was not a good thing. Boss, it's great, Xia Jiqing said excitedly. Although she did not know why Mo Yunjue made such a decision and left, but the boss got such a result, this was really a happy thing. First place. This time, the people of Tiangang sect can no longer find any reason. Everyone's eyes are different. This feeling is really cool. Yuan Xiaoman said excitedly. Now that the assessment competition was over, there was no longer a competitive relationship between the cultivators, so there was less targeting and more envy. After knowing the results of the boss, they really breathed a sigh of relief and no longer needed to worry about this problem. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly, and her eyes condensed on Di Beichun on the high platform. No matter what, at least the gap between them had narrowed a little. At the very least, when she stood beside Di Beichun, no one would say that she relied on seductive means to gain Di Beichun's favor. For the man she loved deeply, she only hoped that she could become more outstanding and powerful as soon as possible. In 2 years, she had improved a lot, but she also knew that Di Beichun had improved a lot as well. But at least, she had closed the gap between them a little. In the distance, after Mo Yunjue saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had obtained first place, a warm and happy smile appeared on his usually calm face. The distance between Hongzhuang and Di Beichun narrowed again. Even though there was an indescribable pain in his heart, he was still happy for Hongzhuang. For a guy like him, he had almost forgotten what it felt like to be happy. However, in the past year or so, he had once again experienced the feeling of happiness. Now, he only hoped that Hongzhuang was happy, and that was enough. The assessment competition was over, and he should return to the darkness. He used to be confident that he would see Hongzhuang again, but after Hongzhuang went to Tiangang sect, he could not guarantee that he would meet her again. They had already made their decision. Tiangang sect was their choice. Moreover, Tiangang sect was an extremely powerful existence in the sect. Many cultivators dreamed of becoming a disciple of Tiangang sect. Bailey Hongzhuang's mind was thinking about Limitless Palace. Her master was the Palace Lord of Limitless Palace. Since she had received the inheritance of Limitless Palace, should she go to Limitless Palace? However, she hadn't seen her master yet, so she didn't know the exact situation. She had become a young palace master of Limitless Palace out of nowhere. She had some doubts in her heart. At this moment, she really didn't know what to do. Chapter 1599. Bailey Hongzhuang was the first on the top 100 list. It was not a problem for her to choose to enter Tiangang's sect, but they could only choose by drawing lots. What should they do? They had made up their minds to cultivate in the same sect. If they were assigned to different sects, it would be difficult for them to get together in the future. They had been together for so long and had long been used to being together. If they were separated like this was not what they wanted to see. Boss, will we be separated like this? Xia Jiqing's long eyebrows were twisted together. She had made up her mind to be with the boss all the time. If her luck was bad and she was not drawn to Tiangang sect, what should she do? Gong Shaoqing and the others also frowned. As long as they could enter the sect, it was a happy thing for them. However, if they could, they naturally hoped that they could still be together. Hearing Xia Jiqing's words, Bailey Hongzhuang recovered from her thoughts. It shouldn't be. Beichun will have a way. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. They were the team representing Tiangang's sect to participate in the assessment competition. The elders of other sects would understand. As long as Di Beichun said a word, they should be able to enter Tiangang's sect. After all, they could represent Tiangang's sect to participate in the assessment competition, which proved that they were the internal cultivators of Tiangang's sect. Thinking about this situation in the assessment competition, the elders of other sects would also understand. Now, the top 10 cultivators on the top 100 list, which sect you choose to join, stand in front of the corresponding sect elder. Gu Taiyong said, Following Gu Taihong's words, the top 10 cultivators all moved forward. Only they had the opportunity to make such a choice. Many cultivators' eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. They did not know which sect Bailey Hongzhuang would choose to enter. Just as the cultivators were choosing, suddenly, above the high platform, a golden figure jumped down and walked directly into the crowd. Looking at the golden figure, the cultivators present were all astonished. On this high platform, Di Beichun was the most eye-catching. Now that Di Beichun made such a special move, they were really curious about what he was going to do. What is young sect Master Di doing? When Gu Taihong saw Di Beichun suddenly jump off the high platform without saying a word, a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. Looking at Gu Taihong's puzzled look, the Yun family's elder smiled and said, "Young sect Master Di's fiancé is also participating in the assessment competition. He should be going to fetch his fiancée now." As soon as he said this, the elders on the high platform had a look of understanding in their eyes. Di Beichun was at the peak of his youth, so it was normal for him to pick up his fiancée who was participating in the assessment. Looks like the engagement between young sect Master Di and Miss Han is going to be held soon. The Yun family's elder sighed. However, when the Yun family's elder mentioned Miss Han, an elder could not help but be puzzled. "I heard that young sect Master Di's fiancée is not Miss Han, but Miss Bailey." The Yun family's elder frowned. "How is that possible? Aren't young sect Master Di and Miss Han a match made in heaven?" Chapter 1600. For a moment, many of the elders present talked about Di Beichun. After all, as the young sect master of Tiangang's sect, Di Beichun's affairs had always been very eye-catching, not to mention his marriage. Tiangang's sect didn't hide Bailey Hongzhuang's affairs, so those who wanted to find out would know the result if they asked carefully. Although everyone thought that Han Xiling and Di Beichun were a match made in heaven, it was obvious that Di Beichun didn't think so. After hearing a series of words from the crowd, the Yun family elder realized that he really wasn't well informed. Miss Bailey? Could it be Bailey Hongzhuang, who is ranked first on the top 100 list? The Yun family elder asked curiously. As the Yun family elder's voice fell, all the elders present were stunned for a moment. They didn't pay much attention to this question before. "I'm not sure about this. I only know that her surname is Bailey, but I can't remember her name." Everyone was helpless. In fact, they only knew about Di Beichun's marriage as an interesting matter. In their opinion, Di Beichun would eventually be together with Han Xiling. Now, everything was just a farce. With his identity as the young sect master of Tiangang's sect, it was absolutely impossible for him to find a woman with no background to be his fiancée. Di Beichun walked all the way into the crowd, towards the figure that he missed day and night. In the past 2 years, he missed her all the time, and now, Bailey Hongzhuang finally appeared in front of him safe and sound. The cultivators in the crowd looked at Di Beichun in confusion, not understanding why he suddenly walked into the crowd. The woman standing in front of Bailey Hongzhuang had completely fallen into madness. She stood there blankly, not knowing what to do. "Oh my God, the young sect master is walking towards me. I said before that the young sect master was smiling at me, but you didn't believe me. He must have fallen for me." In the vast sea of people, he discovered my existence with a single glance. The woman's face was filled with an excited smile. She had always thought that there would be a day when such a perfect man would fall in love with her. However, she didn't expect this scene to come so suddenly, which made her feel even more surprised. When the surrounding female cultivators heard her words, the envy and jealousy in their eyes gradually deepened. They just couldn't understand what was so good about this girl. Why did young sect master take a fancy to her? Xia Jiqing and the others were completely speechless after seeing the woman in front of them so proud and happy. This person really knew how to put the blame on herself. Di Beichun was clearly looking at Boss. Okay? Di Beichun was walking over to welcome Boss. "All right, what does this have to do with you?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun, slowly walking over, and the smile in her eyes gradually spread. The spring breeze rippled, and her heart was slightly warm. Di Beichun slowly walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, but found that a woman had been standing in the same place between him and Hongzhuang. He couldn't help but frown. The woman looked at Di Beichun excitedly. Her Prince Charming really came in front of her. As long as she was with Di Beichun, her identity would be different from the past. However, just as the woman was about to approach Di Beichun suddenly bypassed her. Chapter 1601. The cultivators who were originally envious of the woman were no longer envious after seeing this scene. Instead, they couldn't help but laugh at her. She really knows how to daydream. She doesn't know how to look in the mirror to see what she looks like. How could the dignified young lord of Tiangang's sect take a fancy to her? Some people are just whimsical, thinking that she is the only one who is different from the rest in the world. The face of the woman who was laughed at also became extremely ugly. She quickly turned around, wanting to know who Di Beichun was looking for. Di Beichun stood in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. His deep and bright eyes stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. His doting and joy almost overflowed. Wife. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a beautiful smile. Her delicate and perfect face was even more beautiful at this moment. Yes, 2 years of longing seemed to have dissipated at the moment of meeting. All of this had disappeared when they saw each other. Just one look from him was enough to melt everything. They didn't even need to say anything else. Just by staring at each other, they already knew. Di Beichun stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. After not seeing her for 2 years, Hongzhuang became even more beautiful. There was a trace of heroic spirit between her eyebrows, less immature and more determined in her eyes. She just stood quietly in the crowd, and her existence was unforgettable. She was always so eye-catching, so bright, so elegant, and so refined. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled at Di Beichun. In 2 years, Di Beichun's figure became more and more tall and straight. He really looked like a handsome and impeccable perfect prince. She could feel that Di Beichun's aura was thicker and sharper. Compared to the past, it undoubtedly gave people more pressure, but it made no difference to her. When Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang stared at each other, the surrounding cultivators were already dumbfounded. Bailey Hongzhuang was the leader of Tiangang dynasty, and they all knew about it. However, what did Di Beichun call Bailey Hongzhuang just now? Wife. Bailey Hongzhuang was Di Beichun's wife? Didn't that mean that Bailey Hongzhuang was the wife of the young lord of Tiangang's sect? When this thought appeared in everyone's mind, everyone was completely dumbfounded. They never knew that Bailey Hongzhuang actually had such an identity. This was too shocking. Bailey Hongzhuang is actually the wife of Tiangang, Zhong's young lord. Her identity is very extraordinary. Bailey Hongzhuang's hidden identity is really too deep. With such a great identity, why would she still participate in the exam? No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang's strength is so powerful. Fortunately, I didn't offend Bailey Hongzhuang. Otherwise, I'll really have a hard time in the future. After the cultivators of Qinrun dynasty and Myriad Cloud dynasty saw this scene, their feelings were also very complicated. Previously, they already knew the identity of Bailey Hongzhuang, but now when they really saw this scene, they couldn't help but feel shocked. The cultivators of Qinrun dynasty couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the leader had led them to apologize to Miss Bailey. Otherwise, they would really be in big trouble. Dong Hongyun sighed faintly. At first, he thought that Han Shiling's identity was very extraordinary. Now, he knew that compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, it was nothing. Chapter 1602. Tiangang Dynasty. I've never heard of this name before. Bailey Hongzhuang is also the wife of Tiangang sect's young sect master. This name, could it be that they randomly came up with it? It was unknown which cultivator voiced out his conjecture. All the cultivators present were stunned for a moment, and the look in their eyes gradually changed. The name Tiangang Dynasty was extremely famous in the assessment competition, but in reality, no one had ever heard of the name Tiangang Dynasty. Now that it was linked to Tiangang sect, they felt that it was really possible that it was fabricated. No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shilling would fight. This means that they are love rivals. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's ability is much stronger than Han Shilling, and now it seems that she is very compatible with Di Beichun. This is a real match made in heaven. Stop dreaming. Originally, the extremely proud lady had already understood when she saw Di Beichun stop in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. It turned out that Di Beichun wasn't smiling at her at all. It was only because she happened to be standing in front of Bailey Hongzhuang that she had misunderstood. From the beginning to the end, Di Beichun was looking at Bailey Hongzhuang, and all her fantasies seemed especially laughable at this moment. Compared to this lady, the crowd of cultivators felt much better when they saw that the other party was Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang's results were outstanding enough, and they were unable to reach her. The human heart was like this. When a lucky person was someone who was similar to you, your heart would always be unbalanced and would be jealous, resentful, and unconvinced. But when the other party became someone who was unreachable, everyone would only feel envious and feel that it was natural. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang was like this in their eyes. She was too outstanding, and they couldn't be jealous at all. In the next moment, Di Beichun directly pulled Bailey Hongzhuang into his arms under the crowd's shocked gaze. Suddenly being hugged by Di Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Her clear eyes were filled with a trace of astonishment, and her body was somewhat stiff. Feeling the familiar warmth and fragrance in his body, Di Beichun only felt that his heart, which had been numb for the past 2 years, had finally started to beat again. "You're back, it's great." In the end, she had returned to his side safely. Just like 2 years ago, nothing had changed. Hearing the voice that was filled with longing, Bailey Hongzhuang's slightly tensed body relaxed, and the affection in her eyes became gentler and deeper. "I said, I'll return safely." 2 years ago, she had promised that she would return safely and return to his side. And he had promised that he would come to pick her up and never let Hongzhuang's wishes. After 2 years of separation, the feelings between them had never faded. On the contrary, with the passage of time, this feeling had become deeper and stronger. Even though they were on different sides, they had never questioned the feelings between them. Even though they had never contacted each other, their hearts had never been separated. From the moment they decided to be together, they had already been together in life and death. Xia Jiqing and the others looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who were hugging each other, and their faces showed a happy smile. Speaking of which, the feelings between Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang were deeply admired by them. Chapter 1603. In the distance, Immerse Yundua watched as Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang hugged each other tightly. A storm swept through his deep eyes, but his expression did not change in the slightest. Just as he had expected, Di Beichun's heart towards Bailey Hongzhuang remained firm and unwavering. It was because of their firm hearts that he clearly knew that he had no chance. The cultivators behind Immerse Yundua did not understand why their young master had returned like this. Based on their young master's excellence, not many people in this world could compare to their young master. However, when they saw that the other party was Di Beichun, their expressions changed. This was because Di Beichun was definitely one of the few people in the Shengxian continent who could compete with their young master. They had never expected such a situation to occur. The probability of such a thing happening was simply too small. They never thought that things would be so coincidental that their young master and Di Beichun would fall in love with the same woman. However, after thinking about it carefully, everyone understood. Based on their young master's personality, ordinary women would never be able to enter his eyes. Naturally, a woman who could enter their young master's eyes would not be an ordinary person. When Di Beichun also fell in love with Bailey Hongzhuang, they finally understood how outstanding Bailey Hongzhuang was. Mo Yunjue remained silent. Hong Zhuang was such a good woman. Di Beichen would definitely cherish her and not let her go. When the elders on the high platform saw Di Beichen embrace a woman in white in front of everyone, they were completely stunned. Di Beichen's actions were so open and aboveboard. This proved that Di Beichen was not just in love with this woman in white. As the young master of the Tiangang sect, Di Beichen would always attract attention no matter what he did. Now that Di Beichen treated this woman in such a high-profile manner, it was enough to see his intentions. Many of the elders present had seen Han Shilling before. Naturally, they could tell at a glance that the woman Di Beichen was hugging was not Han Shilling. Looks like you guys were right. That woman really isn't Han Shilling. The elder of the Yun family sighed faintly. It seemed that he would have to pay attention to these matters in the future. Fortunately, he did not make a fool of himself this time. That woman in white should be the woman that young sect Master Di brought back to Tiangang sect, right? From the looks of it, he seems to be extraordinary as well. Looks like it's really impossible between young sect Master Di and Miss Han. For a moment, all the elders looked curiously at Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang. They were really curious about what kind of woman could make Di Beichen so interested in her. Di Beichen had always been a genius cultivator in everyone's eyes. In addition to his extraordinary status, he was a well-known figure in the Shengxian continent. They believed that Di Beichen's taste would not be bad. They were even more curious about what kind of charm Bailey Hongzhuang had. Just as the elders were guessing the identity of the woman in white, Cheng Hufeng and Yu Junfei below the high platform were completely dumbfounded. They never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be the woman that the young sect master of the Tiangang sect liked. With this identity alone, it would be a simple matter to kill them. Thinking about the situation when they threatened Bailey Hongzhuang, they could not help but break out in cold sweat. What kind of existence did they offend? Chapter 1604. Bailey Hongzhuang is actually the fiancée of Tiangang sect's young sect leader. Yu Junfei was secretly speechless. He had never expected such a situation. Bailey Hongzhuang's identity was actually so honorable. They had even offended Bailey Hongzhuang previously. Tiangang dynasty isn't a small dynasty at all. It's a team that represents Tiangang sect in the assessment competition. Cheng Hufeng's gaze kept changing. Previously, he had already guessed that Tiangang dynasty might be related to Tiangang sect. However, he didn't think too much about it. He only felt that this possibility was very small. They never thought that the final result was a result that they couldn't have guessed at all. For a moment, they only felt that Fang Wenqing's death wasn't a loss at all. If Fang Wenqing was still alive, they were afraid that the following situation would be even more painful for him. Thinking of this, they couldn't help but worry about themselves. After all, they had threatened Bailey Hongzhuang. Although they chose to leave in the end, they didn't form any good karma. If Bailey Hongzhuang held a grudge, as long as Di Beichen gave the order, then they would really have a dead end. Although they came from a large dynasty and their family had a certain amount of power in the large dynasty, it couldn't be compared to Tiangang sect at all. However, there was no use for the two of them to be upset. They could only rely on the following days to think of a way to resolve it. Di Beichen slowly let go of Bailey Hongzhuang. A devilish smile appeared on his handsome face. "Wife, let's go over." Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay. As long as Di Beichen was by her side, she felt that her heart had never felt so stable before. As long as he was here, she didn't fear anything. Di Beichen directly pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and slowly walked towards the high platform. After seeing this scene, the surrounding cultivators all opened up a path. Their gazes landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. Other than envy, there was only envy. How many men in the world were as outstanding as Di Beichen? Moreover, Di Beichen was so infatuated and sincere to her. It was really a blessing that could only be cultivated for 1,000 years. How many people couldn't find such a good man in their lifetime? Bailey Hongzhuang followed Di Beichen all the way forward. It didn't take long for them to reach the high platform. Di Beichen turned around and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Wife, wait for me below the stage. I still have some things to do. This time, he replaced the Grand Elder to recruit cultivators. Later, he would need to draw lots, so he could not leave for a while. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. It's okay, I understand. Di Beichen's eyes were filled with a smile. Then, his figure flashed, and he appeared on the high platform again. All the elders' gazes were fixed on Di Beichen. Di Beichen's actions today were really unexpected. Young sect Master D, this lady in white is your fiancée? Gu Taihong asked with a smile. Di Beichen nodded slightly and said without hesitation, That's right. Listening to Di Beichen's affirmative answer, everyone began to understand one after another. They were afraid that the day of their wedding was not far away. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and saw Bailey Hongzhuang standing in front of Di Beichen with an indifferent expression. A gentle breeze blew and her white dress fluttered in the wind. An otherworldly and ethereal aura spread out, giving people an indescribable sense of comfort. Chapter 1605. Everyone nodded secretly. In their opinion, this lady in white was also a beautiful lady, and she didn't look any worse than Han Shieling. However, they didn't know the talent and strength of this lady in white. If she only had looks, then she was still extremely incompatible with Di Beichen. Gu Taihong glanced at the cultivators standing in front of him. There were exactly 10 of them, including the lady in white. However, this lady in white was young sect Master D's fiancée. She shouldn't be in the top 10 of the top 100 list, right? Are the top 10 of the top 100 list here? Gu Taihong asked. Yes, the 10 cultivators said in unison. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang also responded, the surprise in Gu Taihong's eyes deepened. The group of elders also understood that young sect Master D's fiancée was also one of the top 10. When everyone thought of this, they couldn't help but be stunned for a moment and turn to look at the top 100 list. In the top 10 of the top 100 list, only Bailey Hongzhuang had the surname Bailey. Young sect Master D's fiancée also had the surname Bailey. In that case, Bailey Hongzhuang, who was ranked first on the top 100 list, was young sect Master D's fiancée? As this guess appeared in everyone's mind, everyone was stunned. They didn't expect young sect Master D's fiancée to be so powerful. For a moment, the elders felt bitter in their hearts. They originally wanted to win Bailey Hongzhuang over to their sect, but now it seemed that there was no chance at all. Recruiting the fiancée of Tiangang's sect's young sect master to their sect? Wasn't this a joke? Everyone sighed faintly. It was rare for such an outstanding seedling to appear, but they didn't expect their hopes to be completely destroyed. They didn't feel good in their hearts. Compared to the depressed elders of other sects, Gu Taihong was dumbfounded. The palace master sent him to the assessment to bring the young palace master back. But what was the situation now? The palace master didn't tell him that the young palace master was the fiancé of Tiangang sect's young sect master. How was he going to bring the young palace master back now? However, on second thought, Gu Taihong admired the palace master's foresight more and more. The palace master left an inheritance in the assessment competition. The successor found was not only the first place of the assessment competition, but also the fiancé of the Tiangang sect's young sect master. With all these conditions added together, Bailey Hongzhuang's identity was already extraordinary. In this way, if Bailey Hongzhuang really took over Limitless Palace, it would not be unacceptable. However, what should he do in this situation? Gu Taihong's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and said, Miss Bailey, I am Elder Gu of the Limitless Palace. Do you want to come to our Limitless Palace? After much consideration, Gu Taihong could only ask for Bailey Hongzhuang's opinion. Originally, in his opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely choose Limitless Palace, but he didn't expect such a situation to happen. Even if he couldn't bring Bailey Hongzhuang back, he had to remind Bailey Hongzhuang. Following Gu Taihong's words, everyone present, regardless of whether they were elders or cultivators, looked at Gu Taihong in confusion. The situation couldn't be more obvious, yet Gu Taihong still asked such a question. Wasn't this unnecessary? Chapter 1606. As soon as these words came out, the cultivators present were all dumbfounded. Bailey Hongzhuang will definitely choose Tiangang's sect, but the elder of Limitless Palace actually tried to recruit her. This is really strange. Bailey Hongzhuang's performance is so excellent. It is normal for the elder of Limitless Palace to want to recruit her, although it is useless. AI Bailey Hongzhuang is really famous this time. The elders of the major sects are all trying to recruit her. If only I had such treatment. A group of cultivators sighed. This kind of treatment was not something ordinary people could get. They could only be envious. Xia Jiqing and the others were also surprised after seeing this scene. The major sects were all trying to recruit her. This was what they had guessed before, but that was before everyone knew about Hongzhuang's identity. Now that everyone knew that Hongzhuang was Di Beichen's fiancée, Limitless Palace still continued to recruit her. This was very interesting. Boss is really amazing to have such results. Xia Jiqing smiled. Dong Fengyu smiled slightly. I have a good impression of this elder of Limitless Palace. Yes, if we hadn't already set a goal, Limitless Palace would have been a good choice. Yuan Jixin's face was also full of smiles. It was really not easy for them to come this far. Now that he saw his boss achieve such results, he was also happy. In the distance, Mo Yunjue frowned after seeing Gu Taihong's actions. This situation was a bit strange. As the young master of Shitian Tower, he had a certain understanding of many people in the Shengxian continent. Gu Taihong was an important elder of Limitless Palace, so he naturally had some understanding. According to what he knew, Gu Taihong shouldn't have said such a thing. After all, this kind of recruitment did not have any meaning at all. It might cause Di Beichun to be dissatisfied. With Gu Taihong's smoothness, he would not do such a thankless thing. The only explanation was that there must be something fishy. While no one understood why Gu Taihong was doing this, Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood. In fact, when she heard the name Limitless Palace, she already understood the situation. Master really sent someone to pick her up. Although Gu Taihong's words were not obvious, she still understood the deep meaning of Gu Taihong's words. However, facing the current situation, she could only reject Gu Taihong's invitation for the time being. She would make a trip to Limitless Palace after leaving the assessment. Elder, thank you for your appreciation, but I choose Tiangang's sect now. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed respectfully to Gu Taihong, her voice polite and gentle. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, Gu Taihong understood what Bailey Hongzhuang meant. Looks like Bailey Hongzhuang wants to go to Tiangang's sect first. It was not that he could not understand such an outcome. With Bailey Hongzhuang's intelligence and wisdom, he believed that she would understand the meaning of his words. When the time came, she should go to Limitless Palace by herself. Thinking of this, Gu Taihong looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with more kindness. He had to say that Bailey Hongzhuang's humble and polite appearance was really likable. He was more and more approving of the palace master's choice this time. A young person who could satisfy the palace master would not be a simple person. Chapter 1607. Listening to Gu Taihong's words, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, "Thank you, Elder. If there is a chance, I will definitely visit." The eyes of the elders of the top 10 sects wandered between Gu Taihong and Bailey Hongzhuang. They only felt that Gu Taihong was very special to Bailey Hongzhuang and was unusually kind. They had dealt with Gu Taihong on weekdays, but they rarely saw Gu Taihong treat a cultivator so well. Facing the doubts and guesses of the elders, Gu Taihong acted as if he did not hear them and said, "Since the top 10 cultivators on the list have made their choice, then the rest of the cultivators can start drawing lots to decide which sect they belong to." As soon as these words came out, the elders of the top sects also recovered their serious look. Since there was no hope of recruiting the first place, They also hoped that this time the sect could recruit some disciples with good strength. The cultivators on the list, please come to the front of the high platform. Hearing this, Gong Xiaoqing and the rest of the cultivators on the top 100 ranking walked forward, looking nervous. In their hearts, they all had the sects they wanted to go to, but this was decided by drawing lots. This was completely a matter of luck. Among the top 10 sects, there was only one sect that they wanted to go to the most. This meant that they only had a 10% chance, which was very difficult. Xia Jiqing's heart was nervous. She did not want to be separated from the boss like this. The elders of the top 10 sects had obviously already prepared for the drawing of lots. The lots for the 11th to the 100th place had been placed in the box, waiting for them to draw lots. Based on the number they drew, the corresponding cultivator would be their sect's disciple. This situation was completely based on luck, but it was also a very fair choice. From the 11th to the 100th place, there was naturally a big gap in strength and cultivation talent. If they were lucky, it was possible to draw a cultivator who was very close to the top, but if they were unlucky, they could only draw a cultivator who was at the bottom. The elders of the top 10 sects looked at each other. This time, the results would depend on this moment. However, just as the elders of the top 10 sects were preparing to draw lots, Deep Beichen's voice suddenly sounded. Elders, I have a matter that I hope you can make an exception for me. Deep Beichen's voice was magnetic and reasonable. His humble appearance was full of respect for the elders. Hearing Deep Beichen's words, all the elders said, Young Sect Master D, please speak. As the young master of Tiangang sect, Deep Beichen's status was naturally higher than these elders. The fact that he could speak to them so humbly and politely already made them feel flattered. Naturally, they would not have any objections. The cultivators of this team from the Tiangang dynasty represented my Tiangang sect in the assessment competition back then. Therefore, I wonder if the elders can agree to let them join the Tiangang sect together? Di Beichen had a humble and polite smile on his face. This request was actually very normal, so he was not worried that the elders would disagree. As expected, after hearing this, the group of elders all agreed. Of course, that's not a problem. In fact, their sects also had internally selected cultivators, but the situation of each sect was different. Some selected cultivators did not need to prove their results at all. As long as the assessment was over, they could join the sect. Chapter 1608. After seeing that all the elders had agreed, the smile on Di Beichen's lips widened a bit. Speaking of which, the performance of Xia Jiqing and the others had also exceeded his expectations. They had used their own achievements to prove their potential. He believed that in the future, they would become more and more powerful in Tiangang sect and have a promising future. He had always understood the relationship between Xia Jiqing and the others and Hong Zhuang. If they could all cultivate in Tiangang sect in the future, he thought that his wife would be very happy about it. The cultivators of Tiangang dynasty will now stand directly in the team of Tiangang sect. Gu Taihong's voice resounded in the central square and clearly passed into the ears of every cultivator. Xia Jiqing and the others, who were originally very worried about this matter, after hearing this sentence, their worries completely dissipated. The situation was much better than they had imagined. Di Beichen has really prepared everything. We don't need to worry. Xia Jiqing cheered. She didn't want to be separated from the boss, and now she could finally rest assured. In the future, they could all stay in the same sect and cultivate together and grow together. Fortunately, Di Beichen explained this point. Otherwise, we really can't stay in the same sect. Gong Xiaoqing's cold face was covered with a rare smile. Everything that happened today was great news for them, and it was really delightful. Di Beichen is our big lucky star. Xia Jiqing smiled. Along the way, Di Beichen had helped them a lot. Although Di Beichen had helped them because of the boss. If it weren't for Di Beichen, they wouldn't have been able to participate in the assessment competition together. If it weren't for Di Beichen, they wouldn't have been able to enter the same sect. Tiangang sect. Among all the sects in the Shangxian continent, Tiangang sect was a famous existence. From this moment on, they were already cultivators of the famous sects in the Shangxian continent. Their identity would become completely different from before, and it could really be said that they would bring glory to their ancestors. Compared to the excitement of Xia, Jiqing, and the others, the faces of the remaining cultivators on the list became very ugly. A total of 90 cultivators were divided into 10 sects, which meant that each sect would only send out 9 people. Now that the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty had already occupied 6 spots, it meant that there were only 3 spots left. The chances of entering the Tiangang sect were even smaller. One had to know that Tiangang sect was also a sect that they yearned for. Many cultivators hoped that they could become a cultivator of Tiangang sect. Originally, there were 9 quotas. At least 1 out of 10 cultivators could become a cultivator of Tiangang sect. But now, after this incident, their hopes were almost cut off. However, no matter how dissatisfied everyone was, they had no choice but to pray that they were one of the 3 lucky ones. When Di Beichun saw the 2 unfamiliar faces of Yuan Xiaoman and Yuan Jixin, a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. Obviously, Yuan Jixin and Yuan Xiaoman had joined Hong Zhuang's team later. He had never seen these 2 people before. The elders drew lots very quickly. Not long after, the 90 cultivators had been allocated to their respective locations. This time's assessment competition was considered to have come to an end. Chapter 1609. With Gu Taihong's words, some of the young cultivators present were happy, while others were sad. The cultivators who became disciples of the sect, as they wished, were naturally overjoyed. Their return this time was really glorious. Their relatives, their families, and even their dynasty would be proud of them. They would be famous and become the idols and goals of the cultivators in the dynasty. As for some cultivators who did not succeed in getting a ranking, they were a little sad. They came here full of confidence, but in the end, they did not get any results. However, at least they were alive to participate in the assessment competition. In the past 2 years, their cultivation had also improved a lot. All in all, they had gained a lot from this trip. Among all the cultivators present, only 1 cultivator had been standing in the same place, unable to get rid of the shock. This person was Bailey Haoshuan. He could not believe that the crippled prince he had been ridiculing was actually the young lord of Tiangang's sect. When he noticed Di Beichun on the high platform, he was already dumbfounded. In his eyes, those people on the high platform were unattainable people he would never be able to touch in his life. However, Di Beichun was in that group of people. This news was a huge shock to him. Tiangang sect, what kind of powerful sect was that? As the young lord of Tiangang sect, Di Beichun's identity and status were not what they could imagine. At this moment, he finally understood why Xianyuan Huan knelt to Di Beichun, and why the emperor and empress were also trembling in fear when facing Di Beichun. It turned out that Di Beichun's identity was so amazing. Such an existence, with just a casual order, Fengbo country would be turned into nothingness. However, he did not understand why Di Beichun, with such a noble identity, would appear in Fengbo country and become the prince of Fengbo country. No one explained to him. He could only secretly guess in his heart. Looking at Di Beichun holding Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, he understood that Bailey Hongzhuang's identity was also so unattainable. Bailey Hongzhuang had become Di Beichun's wife and the young lord's wife of Tiangang sect. This was too shocking, right? Xianyuan Huan's heart was also very bitter. With such a noble identity like Di Beichun, he still cherished Bailey Hongzhuang so much. Compared to him, what was he? At that time, he had humiliated Bailey Hongzhuang in every possible way. Speaking of which, he was really stupid. The top 100 cultivators in the assessment competition can now be called disciples. You will have a 3-month holiday when you enter the sect. Gu Taihong smiled and didn't say anything else. The competition had already come to an end. The cultivators cheered. They had worked hard in the assessment competition for 2 years, and had been suppressed for 2 years. Now, they were hoping to have a holiday to let them relax. They felt excited at the thought of the 3-month holiday. However, what happened next caused the elders of the various sects and aristocratic families to be flabbergasted. Chapter 16:10. Seeing this scene, Baichin and the others all had a strange look in their eyes. They already felt that it was very strange for the cultivators of Shirtian Tower to appear in the assessment competition this time. However, after they arrived at the small world, they had been silent. Although everyone felt that it was very strange, they didn't say much. Now that they heard the words of the cultivators of Shirtian Tower, they also reacted. It turned out that the young master of Shirtian Tower was also participating in the assessment competition. After everyone knew this, their hearts became even more intense. Although they had never seen the young sect master of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion, the young sect master of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion had always been famous. He was also a very powerful existence. Why would he want to participate in the assessment competition? Isn't this too strange? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes changed a little, and a guess gradually emerged in her mind. In the next moment, under everyone's astonished eyes, a group of black figures flew over from afar and appeared on the high platform. However, these black-clothed people all had their faces covered, and it was impossible to see their faces clearly. With the appearance of the leader of the black-clothed people, the cultivators of Shirtian Tower knelt down and said, "Greetings, young master." The black-clothed people raised their right hand slightly, and the cultivators of Shirtian Tower stood up one after another. Baichin's eyes that were as deep as the sea flashed with a stream of light. It seemed that his judgment was not wrong. The young master of Shirtian Tower was indeed participating in the assessment competition. However, looking at the figure of the young master of Shirtian Tower, he felt that it was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. With the appearance of the black figure, Bailey Hongzhuang recognized at a glance that this person was Mo Yunjue. Even though he had never revealed his true appearance, his figure and his characteristics had never been hidden. They had been teammates for so long, and they had been together for so long. Naturally, she had a certain understanding of him. Mo Yunjue's gaze also fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. The two of them looked at each other. Mo Yunjue did not reveal anything, but directly withdrew his gaze. Gong Shaoqing and the others were also surprised when they saw Mo Yunjue. They also recognized Mo Yunjue. They had been together for so long that they could tell who he was just by looking at his back. Before, they had been wondering why Mo Yunjue suddenly disappeared and gave all his points to Hongzhuang. At this moment, they had completely understood. Shirtian Tower was a very extraordinary existence in Shangxian continent. Although they had always been very curious about Mo Yunjue's identity, they had never thought that Mo Yunjue would be the young master of the Shirtian Tower. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but open her mouth wide. Mo Yunjue's identity was so powerful, they had no idea before. It's no wonder that Mo Yunjue was not afraid of the dynasty and directly stood to save them. It turned out that Mo Yunjue was such a powerful existence. Mo Yunjue was such a powerful existence. With his identity as the young master of Shirtian Tower, it was not difficult to stop the actions of the royal family of the Qingxiao dynasty. After Baichin noticed the expressions of Gong Shaoqing and the others, his gaze fell on Mo Yunjue again. At the same time, Mo Yunjue also looked at Baichin. When the two people's eyes met, Baichin was shocked. He immediately recognized Mo Yunjue. He had to admit that when he was in the Qingxiao dynasty, Mo Yunjue had left a deep impression on him. This man had always been very aggressive, and he had never hidden his feelings for Hongzhuang. Chapter 16:11. From the first time he saw Mo Yunjue, Baichin knew that Mo Yunjue liked Hongzhuang. His eyes were sharp and sharp, with a trace of competition and alertness. He had never concealed his feelings for Hong Zhuang. Then, in the conversation with Mo Yunjue also bluntly said all this. He had also investigated Mo Yunjue's identity, but Mo Yunjue's identity was hidden very well, leaving no clues. From that moment on, he already knew that Mo Yunjue's identity was not simple. With his methods, he could not investigate Mo Yunjue's true identity, which was enough to prove that the strength behind Mo Yunjue was not weaker than him. However, he did not expect that Mo Yunjue would be the young master of the Shitian Pavilion. In the Shengxian continent, the Shitian Pavilion was a very special existence, and the reputation of the Shitian Pavilion's young master was extremely resounding. The only difference was that the young master of the Shitian Pavilion had never shown his true face, so no one knew what the young master of the Shitian Pavilion looked like. Even if he appeared in front of you, you would not recognize him. Mo Yunjue's identity was not what surprised him the most. He was surprised that Mo Yunjue would come to participate in the assessment competition. Almost immediately, Di Beichen already knew the purpose of Mo Yunjue's participation in the assessment competition. He came for Hong Zhuang. With Mo Yunjue's identity, there was no need for him to participate in the assessment competition. It could be said that no one in the assessment competition was his opponent. Then, the answer was obvious. If not, Xia Jiqing and the others would not have recognized Mo Yunjue at a glance, and their expressions were so surprised. Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue's eyes became sharp almost at the same time, and countless sparks of collision spread, but only the two of them knew. The tactile feeling between rivals was always obvious. Soon, Mo Yunjue took the lead to withdraw his gaze and looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang, and then disappeared from the assessment competition with the cultivators of the Shitian Pavilion. The elders on the high platform were also puzzled after seeing this scene. The cultivators of the Shitian Pavilion rarely spoke, and even if they met, they would not greet each other. They had long been accustomed to this. However, what they did not understand was why the young master of the Shitian Pavilion would appear here. The young master of the Shitian Pavilion actually participated in the assessment competition. This is really a strange story. With his strength, there's no need to participate in the assessment competition. Is there anything special about this assessment competition? I don't know. The people of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion have always had strange characters. This is the first time I have seen the young master of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion. The elders shook their heads one after another. The Shitian Pavilion was already famous for being a maverick, so they didn't take it to heart. Xia Jiqing and the others stared blankly at Mo Yunjue and the others leaving, but they did not say anything. Because the shock in their hearts was too great, they could not believe that the teammate they had been with for so long was actually the lord of the Shitian Pavilion. They could naturally think of the problems that others could think of. Mo Yunjue did not need to participate in the assessment competition at all. With his identity, it was impossible for him to be excluded by the cultivators of the Qianfeng dynasty. He deliberately joined their team, walked all the way until now, and finally gave all his points to Hong Zhuang, and now left without saying a word. Chapter 16:12. Very quickly, Gong Xiaoqing and the rest understood. There was only one reason Mo Yunjue did this, for Hong Zhuang. From the beginning to the end, Mo Yunjue spent 2 years, wasted 2 years, and everything he did was for Hong Zhuang. At this moment, they finally understood why Mo Yunjue suddenly left. It was impossible for him to join Tian Gang's sect. Presumably, Mo Yunjue should have told Hong Zhuang this before he left yesterday. Thinking of this, everyone sighed in their hearts. Just from everything Mo Yunjue did, they could tell that Mo Yunjue truly liked Hong Zhuang. Unfortunately, Hong Zhuang already had Di Beichen, so there was no more chance. Regarding this, everyone could only feel that it was a pity. As for Mo Yunjue leaving so cleanly, they felt even more admiration. It seemed as long as Di Beichen wasn't by Hong Zhuang's side, Imo Yunjue would appear. He was like a flower protector, and when Di Beichen came, he would leave. But it was this kind of sacrifice and no request that made them even more amazed and impressed. How many people in this world could do this? Dong Fengyu's expression was very complicated. He knew that he couldn't do what Imo Yunjue did. Putting aside his identity, background, and status, everything he did couldn't be compared to Imo Yunjue or Di Beichen. With Imo Yunjue's noble status, he was willing to stay by Hong Zhuang's side as an ordinary cultivator. From the beginning to the end, he didn't ask for anything. This kind of sacrifice, who could do it? Master! Imo Yunjue left just like that. Xiaohei's eyes flashed with a complicated light. It also didn't know what Imo Yunjue said to its master last night. But seeing Imo Yunjue leave just like that, it felt a little stifled in its heart. Don't think about it. It's best that he left. Di Beichen is the right man for master. Xiaobai said. It admired Imo Yunjue, admired his determination. He knew what was best for master. To be honest, it liked Imo Yunjue, but Di Beichen's feelings for master weren't littles at all. The most important thing was master's feelings. Baisher was silent and did not speak. He was very clear that his master liked Di Beichen. No matter how much Imo Yunjue did, no matter how touching it was, their master's heart would not change. It would only make them sigh. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was complicated, but it quickly returned to normal. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. His deep and charming eyes stared at Bailey Hongzhuang, filled with deep love and tenderness. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a bright and beautiful smile. Perhaps she was selfish. Her heart only had room for one person. Let's go. Di Beichen turned to look at the cultivators behind him and said. Hearing this, everyone nodded. They couldn't wait to leave the small world. In the next moment, everyone rushed out and left the small world. Under Di Beichen's lead, everyone appeared in the Tiangang sect's territory through the transportation array. Because every assessment competition was organized by the 10 great sects, there was a transportation array at the exit of the assessment competition that led to each sect. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.